Living off my son's money, and you have the nerve to be rude? My mother-in-law, Catherine's voice echoed through the room. I don't even want to speak to you, she yelled, her words cutting sharply. After that outburst, she began ignoring me completely. Days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, I had endured 3 months of her silent treatment. To compound the situation, Catherine and my husband John did something unthinkable. The key doesn't work, I exclaimed in disbelief, realizing they had changed the locks on our home without informing me. Fed up with their behavior, I quietly sold the house and made the decision to move out. My name is Karen, a 29-year-old office worker. I've been married to John for 2 years now. We first met at a mutual friend's party where he stood out with his charming personality. John, 3 years my senior, works in sales for a traditional company. He's incredibly charismatic and effortlessly entertaining. We hit it off instantly, and soon we were dating regularly. Over time, our relationship deepened, and after 1.5 years, John proposed. I can't imagine my life without you, Karen. Will you marry me? He asked, presenting a ring during a romantic evening at a fancy restaurant with a breathtaking view. It was cliche, but I loved every moment of it and eagerly said yes. And so we tied the knot. Our family gathered, we had our ceremony, and everything went off without a hitch. It was a perfect day, with many of our colleagues and friends joining us, making it a joyous occasion. Following our honeymoon, we began our life together under one roof. Both of us juggle work, so we split household chores to keep things balanced. John, who had experience helping his mother Catherine around the house, was adept at domestic tasks and an excellent cook. His homemade meals were a delight, and on our days off, we cherished our dates and the quality time spent together. I felt incredibly fortunate to have him as my husband. 2 years into our marriage, our love remains strong, and we lead a happy life. However, not everything is perfect. The issue lies with Catherine. From the moment we met, she displayed a cold demeanor towards me. The root of her disapproval seemed to stem from my educational background. Oh, you graduated from a less prestigious college? I find it hard to trust people who didn't excel academically, Catherine once disparaged me. While my college wasn't Ivy League, I chose it for its specialized courses that aligned with my interests. I firmly believe one's educational pedigree doesn't define their worth, especially in the real world. Catherine's remarks about my education caught me off guard and left me feeling deeply hurt. Tension hung thick in the air during our family gatherings, leaving my husband visibly uneasy. I had harbored reservations about Catherine even before we married, but my love for John outweighed my concerns. Since losing her husband a few years ago, Catherine lived alone in her in-laws' home. She frequently visited us, often finding fault with my efforts. Your cleaning skills are lacking. Sloppiness irks me. Ensure every corner is spotless, she'd critique, oblivious to the fact that John had cleaned just the day before. Not wanting to provoke further conflict, I remained silent, apologizing and weathering her criticisms. Yet Catherine's visits persisted, each one bringing new disparagements. You lack education, can't manage household tasks, and haven't even started a family. What do you even bring to this marriage? Her words stung deeply, especially when I was already feeling vulnerable. Fed up, I finally confided in John. Can't we address Catherine's treatment of me? What about her treatment? She's constantly insulting me, he replied, frustrated. Really? I never noticed. His casual response caught me off guard. My husband didn't perceive his mother's comments as derogatory. Hearing this revelation in our 2nd year of marriage left me stunned. Are you serious? I don't think Mom means to be hurtful, I faltered, questioning my own perceptions. Was I the one overreacting? No, it couldn't be me. It was becoming clear that both my husband and Catherine were out of touch. This realization deepened my growing distrust toward my husband. I had sensed hints of his complex relationship with his mother before, but it hadn't been an issue until now. His issues with his mother were becoming a real concern. Mom thinks you should cook more nutritious meals. Can we add more variety to our menu? He asked one evening. We both have demanding jobs. I can't prepare elaborate meals every day, I replied, trying to balance our responsibilities. A wife's cooking can inspire her husband to work harder and succeed. So please put more effort into cooking. I feel like you've been cutting corners, he pressed, echoing his mother's expectations. Fine. I reluctantly expanded the menu, which made dinner preparation more labor-intensive. However, What truly unsettled me was Catherine's reaction when she found out that my husband was sharing the household chores. How dare you make John do housework? A wife should never do that. Stop it right now. Catherine's voice rang out angrily, pushing me to my limit. Both my husband and I work full-time, so it's only fair to share the chores, I countered calmly. You, my daughter-in-law, dare to speak against me? Unbelievable. This is why I can't tolerate people without proper education. My argument has nothing to do with education. In fact, I believe my perspective is more suited to modern times. I responded firmly. Your views, Catherine, are outdated. My comment caused Catherine's face to flush red with anger. That's enough. Stop mocking me. I won't stand for this. Catherine stormed off to complain to my husband. Furious, my husband called me over. Mom is really upset. Why are you provoking her? I'm not the one causing trouble here. It's your mom. I tried to explain, but my husband shocked me with his response. This is all your fault, isn't it, Karen? Wait, were you listening? He shot me an irritated glance before continuing with a disapproving expression. What's with the attitude? You've become so disrespectful, just like Mom warned. It's not right for a wife to behave this way. Seriously, even you're saying this now. I felt deeply disappointed. I had hoped my husband held different values from Catherine, but it seemed her influence was stronger than I realized. Could I truly find happiness in this marriage? Uncertainty overwhelmed me. Then my husband dropped another bombshell. Mom is moving in with us, he announced. When? Is she coming again, starting tomorrow? I asked, caught off guard. Don't say starting tomorrow like it's temporary, he replied uneasily. So, it's just for tomorrow? I questioned with a sinking feeling. No, she's moving in, starting tomorrow, he clarified. Moving in? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Since when did this become about living together? My mom finds it inconvenient to keep coming over, so we decided it makes sense for her to move in, he explained, oblivious to my shock. What? Why would you make that decision without discussing it with me? I'm the one bringing in the income. This should be my call. It was increasingly clear that my husband was completely influenced by his mother, Catherine. She must have been feeding him ideas about a wife's obedience, but making a unilateral decision for Catherine to live with us was unacceptable. The following day, Catherine arrived as if it were the most natural thing, hauling large bags with her. She confidently claimed a room on the first floor, behaving as though she had always lived there. Karen, get the coffee brewing, will you? You're such an inconsiderate daughter-in-law, she demanded. Hey, Mom's tired from moving. Cut her some slack. Catherine and my husband immediately joined forces to scold me. The thought of this becoming a daily occurrence was unbearable. I started preparing for any unforeseen circumstances. Catherine continued to boss me around, but at the time, I was deeply engrossed in a significant work project and chose to ignore whatever Catherine or my husband said. Why are you coming home so late? It's Karen's job to make dinner. Why are you making us wait? Catherine demanded. I had to work late. Looks like you both ate already. What's the issue? I replied calmly. My husband and Catherine glared at me, their faces flushed with anger. It's infuriating. Living off my son's money, and you dare talk back? I don't even want to speak to you. Catherine's voice boomed with accusation. I couldn't fathom where she got that idea. I wasn't financially dependent on my husband. In fact, I earned more than him. Yet Catherine seemed fixed in her misconception, and soon enough, she began to actively ignore me. No matter if I greeted her politely or asked a question, she brushed me off. To my dismay, my husband started to follow suit, joining her in this cold silence. Before I knew it, I had endured 3 months of being completely ignored. I was deeply engrossed in a demanding work project, and oddly enough, their silence provided a welcomed respite. Who knew being left alone could be so refreshing? They both wore smug smiles, thinking their silent treatment was getting to me. I saw no harm in letting them think so, even affecting a subdued and disheartened demeanor. But as my project neared its peak, the workload demanded even more of my time. Working tirelessly with my team, we finally reached the project's conclusion. In my intense focus, I had completely forgotten about Catherine and my husband. I was so absorbed that their silence, even if intended to bother me, went unnoticed. At some point, Catherine and my husband must have realized their strategy had no effect on me. That's when they resorted to something unthinkable. My key isn't working. No matter how many times I try, it won't fit the lock, I muttered to myself in frustration. It turned out they had changed the locks without informing me. As I struggled outside, attempting to get in, I overheard Catherine and my husband talking inside. Is that a burglar? Catherine's voice sounded alarmed. Ha, but we're home alone, so it can't be a break-in, right? Catherine's voice carried a mocking tone. Maybe it's trespassing, my husband chimed in, joining her laughter. Yeah, maybe we should call the cops, Catherine added, the amusement clear in her voice. Their laughter and casual discussion echoed through the house. I couldn't believe how far they had taken their disregard for me. It was the final straw. Quietly, I resolved to sell the house and move. This house had been my family home, left to me by my parents when they retired to the countryside last year. I have full ownership rights and had already taken precautions, having the house appraised in case I needed to sell it quickly due to Catherine's presence. I relocated to a business hotel and informed my parents of the situation, along with my decision to sell. Disappointed in my husband and Catherine, they gave me their full support. With their encouragement, I promptly contacted a real estate agent and sold the house. I arranged for a locksmith to change the locks, and as I entered the house, Catherine looked at me, visibly startled. How did you get in? You didn't break the lock, did you? Catherine's voice, laced with indignation, pierced the air, a sound I hoped to never hear again. Ignoring her protests, I began packing my belongings. Say something, I'll call the police for trespassing, she threatened, her voice growing more frantic. Ignoring her threats, I proceeded with my departure, accompanied by movers who swiftly began transporting my larger items. Catherine continued shouting accusations, calling me a thief, but I remained steadfast in my silence. The locksmiths and movers seemed uneasy around Catherine, likely sensing the tension. I had informed them beforehand that Catherine was my husband's mother, suffering from a severe mental condition, and that she had mistakenly changed the locks, believing my home to be hers. The more she screamed, the more evident her condition appeared. Suppressing a smirk, I efficiently directed the move. Soon, all my belongings were gone. I left pre-filled divorce papers on the table and exited without acknowledging Catherine's tirades. As I walked away, Catherine's shouts faded into the background. Let her taste the bitterness of being ignored completely. Later that night, my husband called me, seething with anger. What do you think you're doing, taking things from this house? I decided to confront my husband directly. What are you talking about? I've only taken what I purchased with my own money. Let's not forget, the house itself was passed down to me by my parents. You've been so focused on pleasing Catherine that you've started to believe your own falsehoods. It seemed my words finally struck a chord with my husband. His phone was on speaker, and I could also hear Catherine's voice interject. Wait, what's going on? Perfect. Since Catherine was listening, I continued firmly. Catherine, listen carefully. I've already sold the house, so I need you to leave immediately. And please sign the divorce papers. If you refuse, I'll pursue this through the courts. Both of them fell silent, clearly taken aback by my declaration. Are you giving me the silent treatment again? That's fine, but know that I will not hesitate to enforce this. I knew their silence was not because they were ignoring me, but because they were stunned. Nevertheless, I pressed on. As expected, my husband finally spoke up. Wait, please, but I chose to ignore him and ended the call. Shortly after, I initiated divorce proceedings through my lawyer. My husband promptly agreed, perhaps fearing a drawn-out legal battle. As a result, both my ex-husband and Catherine were evicted. While they could have afforded a decent apartment with the money from the house sale and their pensions, Catherine's reckless spending habits had depleted their resources. She had used my father-in-law's inheritance to pay off debts, leaving my ex-husband struggling to manage the debt she had accumulated. Despite his lengthy explanations and pleas for reconciliation, I chose to ignore him completely. Now, I live alone in a comfortable apartment. I've decided to save the proceeds from the house sale for my retirement. At the moment, I'm focused on advancing my career and aiming for a promotion. Love can wait. I'm prioritizing my own future and stability.
The Shaw family mansion always felt colder on meeting days. Maybe it was the marble floors, or the way voices echoed off high ceilings, or just the icy stares from relatives who saw me as nothing more than a disappointment. Today was especially frigid. I adjusted my simple black dress, a stark contrast to my cousin's designer labels, and took my usual seat at the massive oak table. Last row, far corner. The designated spot for the family's problem child, Olivia, Aunt Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. So glad you could join us. I nodded politely, watching as the room filled with the Shaw family hierarchy. Uncle Robert, the self-appointed patriarch since my father's death. His wife Margaret, forever playing the concerned aunt while wielding gossip like a weapon. Their children, James and Catherine, groomed from birth to take over the family business. And of course, my mother, Victoria Shaw, who'd spent the last 15 years trying to erase any trace of my father from my personality. Now that everyone's here, Uncle Robert began, standing at the head of the table, we need to discuss some concerning matters. I knew what was coming. I'd overheard the whispers, seen the worried glances, noticed how they'd been monitoring my movements more closely lately. Olivia, he turned to me, his voice carrying that particular tone reserved for difficult children. We've been reviewing your recent activities. Of course they had. The Shaw family specialty. Surveillance disguised as care. Your spending patterns are concerning, he continued. Multiple large transfers, substantial stock purchases, property investments in areas we don't approve of. I kept my face neutral, even as I felt my pulse quicken. They've been watching my accounts. Probably had someone at the bank feeding them information. Classic Shaw tactics. We're worried about you, dear, Aunt Margaret chimed in. These risky investments, these questionable business decisions, it's not appropriate for someone of your limited experience. Catherine, my cousin, barely concealed her smirk. We just want to protect you from yourself. Liv. Protect me. The same excuse they'd used when they tried to stop me from going to business school. When they blocked my attempt to work at a competing firm. When they insisted I take a safe position in their company's HR department. The family has decided, Uncle Robert declared, that it's best to put you on a monthly allowance. A reasonable sum, of course. But all major financial decisions will need to be approved by the family council. I'm 28 years old, I said quietly. I don't need an allowance. Don't be difficult, Olivia, my mother snapped. This is for your own good. You're too much like your father, always chasing wild schemes, never thinking things through. The mention of my father sent a familiar ache through my chest. Alexander Shaw, the black sheep who dared to challenge the family's conservative investment approach. Who'd seen opportunities where they saw risks? Who'd died in a car accident when I was 13, leaving me alone in this pit of vipers? Your father's reckless decisions almost bankrupted this family, Uncle Robert reminded me. We won't let history repeat itself. I opened my laptop slowly, deliberately. Before you make any decisions about my financial capabilities, maybe you should look at something. Olivia, my mother warned, but I was already turning the screen around. The first page showed a simple investment portfolio. Blue chip stocks, conservative bonds, exactly what they'd expect. But as I clicked through to the next screen, the room temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Private equity holdings, venture capital investments, and most importantly, a substantial block of shares in Shaw Industries, purchased quietly through a series of shell companies over the past 5 years. What is this? Uncle Robert's voice had lost its condescending edge. My portfolio, I said calmly. The one you apparently missed while you were so busy monitoring my visible accounts. James leaned forward, his face paling as he recognized some of the companies listed. These are our major suppliers. I confirmed. And your technology partners. And your biggest distribution channels. I clicked to the next page. Oh, and this one might interest you, Uncle Robert. Remember that mysterious investor who's been buying up Shaw Industries stock through Goldman Sachs? The color drained from his face. That's impossible. We had our people check every buyer. Your people checked what I wanted them to see. I closed the laptop gently. My father taught me more than just wild schemes before he died. He taught me how to play the long game. You're lying, Catherine accused, but her voice shook slightly. There's no way you could have accumulated that much capital. I smiled, reaching into my bag for a folder I'd prepared. Remember that failing startup I invested in 3 years ago? The one you all mocked me for supporting? I slid the folder across the table. They were just acquired by Microsoft for $8 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother had gone completely still, her perfect posture frozen in shock. Aunt Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I've spent the last 5 years building something, I continued, my voice steady. While you were all busy watching my decoy accounts, criticizing my questionable decisions, and planning to put me on an allowance, I was becoming your largest individual shareholder. Uncle Robert's hands were shaking as he flipped through the documents. Why? He managed finally. Why go through all this deception? I stood up, smoothing my simple dress. Because you never would have let me do it openly. Because you were so convinced I was stupid, reckless, incapable, just like you thought my father was, that you never bothered to look deeper. The board meeting, James suddenly said, realization dawning on his face. Next week. The vote on the new direction for the company. Yes, I confirmed. Interesting timing for this family meeting, isn't it? Trying to restrict my financial control just days before a major board vote. Uncle Robert took a step toward me, his face reddening. Now listen here, young lady. No, I cut him off. You listen. For 15 years, I've watched you run this company exactly the way you've run this family, through control, manipulation, and fear. That ends now. I picked up my laptop and turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and about that allowance? I think we can table that discussion. I have a board meeting to prepare for. The last thing I heard as I walked out was Catherine's voice, barely a whisper. Dad, what just happened? I smiled as I stepped into the elevator. They had no idea that this was just the beginning. Monday's board meeting would bring revelations that would make today look like a minor family squabble. But for now, I had work to do. My father's legacy, and my own, depended on what happened next. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Michael? Yes. Everything went according to plan. Start contacting the other shareholders. It's time for phase 2. The Shaw family had always underestimated me. On Monday, they'd learn exactly how expensive that mistake was going to be. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and strategic calls. By Sunday night, my phone had logged over 50 missed calls from various family members, each one more desperate than the last. Olivia, darling, let's discuss this like adults. Aunt Margaret, you're making a terrible mistake. Mother, this isn't what your father would have wanted. Uncle Robert, that last one made me laugh. They'd spent 15 years telling me my father was a failure. And now they wanted to use his memory as leverage? Too late. I sat in my home office, reviewing the documents one final time. The modern penthouse, purchased through one of my holding companies, offered a perfect view of the Shaw Industries headquarters, the same building where tomorrow everything would change. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Come in, Sarah. My assistant entered, carrying a stack of folders. Final confirmation from all the major shareholders. They'll support your motion tomorrow. I nodded, taking the folders, And the press, on standby. The moment the vote is confirmed, they'll run the story. Perfect. I stood, walking to the window. Any word from Michael? Sarah checked her tablet. Yes. The auditors finished their review. Everything's documented, just as you suspected. I smiled. Uncle Robert had always been arrogant, but his arrogance had made him careless. The audit had uncovered exactly what I'd hoped it would. Years of questionable transactions, nepotistic deals, and buried financial misconduct. My phone buzzed again. James this time. I answered, putting it on speaker. Olivia, please. He started, his voice uncharacteristically humble. We can work something out. Can we, cousin? Like when you worked out having me removed from the executive training program. He faltered. That was years ago. We were kids. No, James. You were kids playing with your inheritance. I was building my own legacy. The board meeting tomorrow. He hesitated. What exactly are you planning? Guess you'll have to show up and find out. I ended the call and turned to Sarah. Everything ready for tomorrow? She nodded. Car will pick you up at 8 a.m. Security team's been briefed. All documents are prepared. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be interesting. After she left, I opened my safe and pulled out an old, worn leather journal, my father's business diary. I found it hidden in his study after the accident, protected from the family's thorough cleaning of his belongings. Inside were detailed notes about every corrupt deal, every manipulated contract, every instance of Uncle Robert's mismanagement. But more importantly, it contained my father's true vision for Shaw Industries, innovative, ethical, forward-thinking. Everything the current leadership feared. Watch me, Dad, I whispered, touching the worn pages. Watch me finish what you started. Monday morning arrived clear and cold. I dressed carefully, charcoal gray suit, pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, before the family had tried to deny me that inheritance too. Hair pulled back severe and professional. The lobby of Shaw Industries was buzzing when I arrived. Board members, shareholders, and executives all trying to look busy while stealing glances at me. News had spread fast. Olivia. Uncle Robert's voice boomed across the marble floor. A word before the meeting? I turned, facing him with a calm smile. Sorry, Uncle. All communication should go through my legal team now. His face reddened. This is family. No, I cut him off. This is business. You taught me that, remember? When you blocked my promotion? When you told everyone I was too emotional to handle client accounts? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whatever you're planning, think carefully. You could destroy everything we've built. You mean everything you've stolen? I matched his quiet tone. Everything you've manipulated and corrupted since my father died. Before he could respond, the elevator opened, and Michael Anderson stepped out, my father's old friend, and now my closest ally in the business world. Olivia, Michael called out warmly. Ready for today? Uncle Robert's face went pale. Michael was not only a respected industry figure, but also the head of the regulatory committee that oversaw family-owned corporations. More than ready, I replied, watching Uncle Robert retreat hastily. The boardroom filled quickly. I took my seat, not in my usual corner, but at the head of the table, the position of power I'd earned through years of patient strategy. Before we begin, Uncle Robert started, trying to maintain control. I think we should address the recent developments in family dynamics. Actually, I'd interrupted smoothly. We should follow the agenda. First item: leadership review and vote of confidence. I nodded to Sarah, who began distributing thick folders to each board member. What is this? Aunt Margaret demanded, flipping through the pages. A comprehensive audit of Shaw Industries management over the past 15 years. I replied. Pay special attention to pages 47 through 52. The evidence of financial misconduct is particularly interesting. The room erupted in whispers as people began reading. Uncle Robert's face went from red to white to gray in the span of seconds. This is a mistake, he stammered. These transactions were all approved. By you, I finished. Using your position as trustee after my father's death, including the systematic devaluation of his shares that should have been held in trust for me. James stood up, panic clear on his face. We can explain. Sit down, cousin, I said quietly. The time for explanations is over. Now it's time for changes. I stood, commanding the room's attention. As the majority shareholder of Shaw Industries, I call for an immediate vote on the current leadership. The next hour was chaos. Votes were cast. Accusations flew. Uncle Robert tried to challenge the legality of my share ownership, only to be shut down by both legal teams. In the end, the numbers were clear. 76% in favor of removal. Uncle Robert, Aunt Margaret, and their entire leadership team gone. Effective immediately. As security began escorting them out, my mother finally spoke up. What happens now? I turned to her, seeing fear in her eyes for the first time. Now? Now we rebuild, the way Dad always wanted. The press release went out within the hour. Shaw Industries announces major leadership change. Olivia Shaw takes control in historic board vote. By evening, I sat alone in what had been Uncle Robert's office, looking out over the city. The same view he'd had while plotting to keep me powerless. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Your mother's downstairs. Should I send her up? I thought for a moment. Yes, it's time for another family meeting. Mother walked into the office like she was entering enemy territory, cautious, defensive, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. For a moment, looking at her perfectly coiffed hair and manicured appearance, I saw myself at 13, desperate for her approval, confused by her coldness after Dad's death. The prodigal daughter, she said, attempting sarcasm, but failing to hide her uncertainty. Satisfied with today's coup, I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down, Mom. We need to talk. She perched on the edge of the seat, as if afraid to get too comfortable. I suppose you'll be removing me from the board as well. That depends, I replied, opening my laptop, on whether you're ready to hear the truth about Dad's death. Her perfectly composed face cracked slightly. What are you talking about? I turned the screen toward her. These are Dad's original business records. The ones Uncle Robert claimed were lost in the accident. Interesting how they showed up in his private safe, isn't it? Mother's hands began to shake. You've been in Robert's private files. I've been everywhere, Mom. In every account, every hidden folder, every secret meeting minute. I know exactly what happened 15 years ago. The color drained from her face as I continued. Dad wasn't being reckless with company money. He discovered Uncle Robert's embezzlement scheme. The accident happened the day before he was planning to take evidence to the board. No, she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. Yes, I said firmly. And you knew. Maybe not everything, But you knew something wasn't right. That's why you let them push me aside, minimize me, try to keep me from asking too many questions. Tears began to slip down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. They said they were protecting the family name. They were protecting themselves, I corrected. And you helped them, all while treating Dad's memory like something shameful. She stood abruptly, pacing the office. What do you want from me, Olivia? An apology? Confession? It's been 15 years. I want the truth. For once in your life, just tell me the truth. She stopped at the window, staring out at the darkening sky. Robert, he told me Alexander was going to destroy everything, that his investigation would bankrupt us all. I was scared. When the accident happened, she trailed off. When the accident happened, you chose sides. I finished. You chose them over Dad's memory, over me. I chose survival, she snapped, turning to face me. I was 39 with a teenage daughter and no real power in this family. What would you have done? I stood slowly, walking to stand in front of her. I would have fought, like I've been fighting for the past 15 years, like Dad taught me to. Silence fell between us, heavy with years of unspoken pain. The investigators will want to talk to you, I said finally, about what you knew when you knew it. She nodded, suddenly looking old. And if I cooperate, then you can keep your board seat, under supervision, but your days of blind loyalty to Uncle Robert are over. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Shaw Industries scandal deepens. Former leadership under criminal investigation. It's really over, isn't it? Mother asked, reading the headline over my shoulder. Their version is over, I corrected. Mine's just beginning. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. The criminal investigation into Uncle Robert and his associates expanded. James and Catherine fled to Europe, their assets frozen. Aunt Margaret had a very public breakdown at the country club. But more importantly, Shaw Industries began to transform. I implemented the innovative strategies my father had outlined in his journal, opened up leadership positions based on merit rather than family connections, established an ethics committee with real power. The market responded enthusiastically. Our stocks soared. New partnerships formed. The press dubbed it the Shaw Renaissance. 1 month after the takeover, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Sarah announced an unexpected visitor. Send them in, I said, not looking up from my work. Hello, Olivia. I froze at the familiar voice. Uncle Robert. Looking decades older, his confident swagger replaced by defeated slump. You're not supposed to be here, I said calmly, pressing the security button under my desk. I needed to see you, to understand. He gestured vaguely at the office at me. How did we not see it? I leaned back, studying him. You saw what you wanted to see. A quiet girl who wouldn't cause trouble. A convenient scapegoat for your schemes. Your father, he started, then stopped. Alexander would be proud. Don't, I cut him off sharply. Don't you dare speak about my father. Security arrived, ready to escort him out. One last thing, he said as they took his arms. Was it worth it? Destroying your family for revenge? I stood, walking to face him. This wasn't about revenge, Uncle Robert. This was about justice. For Dad. For every person you've crushed under your power games. The family destroyed itself. I just exposed the rot. After he was gone, I opened my father's journal again, turning to the last entry he'd written before his death. To my dearest Olivia, never let them make you doubt yourself. True power isn't in controlling others. It's in staying true to your principles. They may call you weak now, but someday you'll show them what real strength looks like. I believe in you always. Tears blurred my vision as I traced his handwriting. We did it, Dad, I whispered. We finally did it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mother. Dinner tonight? Just us? I hesitated, then replied, Yes, we have a lot to talk about. Looking out over the city, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in 15 years. The Shaw family would never be the same. But maybe that was exactly what it needed. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. The agenda included finalizing the company's new direction, appointing a fresh leadership team, and establishing the Alexander Shaw Foundation for Business Ethics. They'd called me stupid, incapable, too weak to handle money. Now they called me CEO. But more importantly, I could finally call myself my father's daughter, proudly, openly, without shame or doubt. And that was worth more than all the Shaw family millions combined. The mahogany boardroom felt smaller than usual, despite its impressive size. Maybe it was the weight of the 12 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Or maybe it was the suffocating knowledge that my own family had orchestrated this ambush. Harrison Enterprises' weekly board meeting had turned into my execution. I'm Victoria Harrison, though everyone calls me Tori. At least they did, until they decided I was a liability to the family business. As I was saying, my older brother James continued, standing at the head of the table where our father usually sat. The company needs a clear direction. We can't afford distractions. His eyes flickered to me meaningfully. I sat quietly, my laptop open to the presentation I'd prepared, the one they hadn't let me give. 6 months of research into digital transformation, a complete roadmap for modernizing our family's construction empire, now destined to remain unshared. Tori's ideas about digital integration are too radical. My sister Amanda chimed in, her perfectly manicured hands folded primly on the table. We're a construction company, not a tech startup. The irony of her statement almost made me smile. If they only knew about the meetings I'd had this morning, about the papers sitting in my briefcase that would reshape the entire industry. Father cleared his throat, his silver hair catching the morning light. Perhaps we should put it to a vote. His voice carried that familiar note of disappointment he perfected over my 32 years. All in favor of removing Victoria from her position as Chief Strategy Officer? I watched as hands rose around the table. James, smirking slightly. Amanda, not quite meeting my eyes. Uncle Robert, who'd taught me to read blueprints when I was 10. Aunt Patricia, who'd always said I was too much like my mother. Brilliant but difficult. Even Cousin Michael, who I'd helped get his first project management role, raised his hand after a moment's hesitation. It's unanimous then, Father announced. Though he hadn't voted himself, he never did. He preferred to let others do the dirty work while maintaining plausible deniability. Don't worry, little sister, James said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. We'll make sure your shares are properly managed. You clearly aren't equipped to handle the responsibility. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately. Is that all? You'll need to clear out your office by the end of the day, Amanda added. We have a reputation to maintain. A reputation. That's what they were worried about. Not the fact that our biggest competitors were going digital. Not the emerging companies disrupting the market. Not the billion-dollar opportunities they were too blind to see. Of course, I said calmly, gathering my things. I wouldn't want to damage the family name. This is for the best, Victoria, Father said, finally meeting my eyes. You're too much of a dreamer. Construction is about concrete and steel, not algorithms and apps. I stood, smoothing my charcoal gray suit, the one I'd worn to sign the papers this morning. The papers that would make tomorrow's meeting very interesting indeed. Just one question, I said, pausing at the door. Who's handling the Morgan development pitch tomorrow? James puffed up immediately. I am. $50 million contract. Biggest residential development deal in the city's history. Something you wouldn't understand, sister. It requires a traditional approach. Traditional, I repeated softly. How fitting. Don't worry your pretty head about it, Amanda sneered. Focus on finding a nice corporate job somewhere. Something with fewer responsibilities. I shouldered my bag, feeling the weight of the documents inside. Oh, I'm not worried. I'll be at the Morgan meeting tomorrow. You're no longer part of this company, James snapped. You can't just. I'll be there. I cut him off. But not as a Harrison. I opened the door, then turned back one last time. By the way, did anyone bother to research who owns Morgan Development Group now? The silence that followed me out was almost as satisfying as what tomorrow would bring. Almost. In my office. Well, my former office. I took one last look at the view. The city sprawled out below, cranes dotting the skyline like mechanical giants. Each one representing a piece of the empire my grandfather had built, the empire my father had expanded, and the empire my siblings thought they were protecting from my modern ideas. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, my CFO. Everything's set for tomorrow. The papers are filed. Summit Industries is officially on record as Morgan's new parent company. I smiled, running my finger along the spine of my grandfather's old ledger, the only thing I planned to take with me. He'd written something on the first page years ago. The future belongs to those who can see it coming. My family was so busy protecting the past, they never saw the future sneaking up behind them. But tomorrow, in that same boardroom, they'd learn exactly what the future looked like. And it looked like me. The next morning, I dressed with particular care. Not in the conservative suits my family preferred, but in a sleek black dress that spoke of power and precision. The kind of outfit you wear when you're about to change everything. As I drove to my real office, the penthouse suite of the city's newest smart building, I thought about the last family dinner, before today's vote. The way they'd laughed when I talked about digital transformation. Construction is about bricks and mortar, James had declared. Leave the computers to the tech nerds. My phone lit up with updates from my team. Summit Industries' acquisition of Morgan Development Group was still under wraps, known only to a select few. The timing had to be perfect. Victoria, my executive assistant Michael, greeted me as I entered my actual office. The Morgan team is ready for their preliminary meeting. I nodded, taking in the wall of screens displaying real-time data from construction sites worldwide. Sites my family didn't know I controlled. And Harrison Enterprises. James just arrived at Morgan's offices for what he thinks is the pitch meeting. He's about to learn it's been moved to their main conference room. I smiled. Make sure our team is in position. I want everything recorded. The Morgan building's main conference room was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, including several Harrison Enterprises construction sites. Sites that would soon be under new management. I took my seat at the head of the table, hidden behind the conference room's smart glass walls. Currently frosted, they would turn transparent at the touch of a button. Timing was everything. James arrived first, strutting in with his presentation folder and his usual arrogance. Amanda followed, carrying the scale models they still used for pitches. So old school, so predictable. Father entered last, looking imperial in his custom suit. They arranged themselves around the table, not noticing the cameras discreetly recording everything. "Morgan's running late?" Amanda asked, checking her watch. "Actually," I said, pressing the button that cleared the smart glass, revealing my presence. "They're right on time." The look on their faces was priceless. James dropped his folder. Amanda's perfect posture crumpled. Father just stared. "What are you doing here?" James demanded. "This is a private meeting." "Is it?" I opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's display system. "Let's talk about privacy, shall we? About private companies, private acquisitions, and private transformations." The screens came to life, displaying Summit Industries' portfolio. Billions in assets, hundreds of construction sites, and most importantly, complete ownership of Morgan Development Group. "What is this?" Father's voice was barely a whisper. "This," I said, standing slowly, "is the future you were too busy mocking to notice. Summit Industries, my company, has been quietly acquiring development firms, construction technology patents, and yes, Morgan Development Group, for the past 3 years. Amanda's face had gone pale. "That's impossible. You don't have that kind of capital." "No." I pulled up another screen. "Remember that digital integration platform you all rejected? The one you said would never work in construction? I built it anyway, licensed it to our competitors. Those algorithms you dismissed? They're now the industry standard." James lunged for his phone, probably trying to verify what I was saying. "Our lawyers will do nothing." I cut him off. Everything was done legally, through shell companies and holding firms. The same way Harrison Enterprises acquired its first contracts. The same way grandfather built his empire. I just did it digitally. Father stood slowly. "Why? Why go behind our backs?" "Behind your backs." I laughed softly. "I tried to do this with you, presented the plans, showed you the potential. You all voted no, voted me out. So I did it myself." The door opened and Morgan Development's executive team entered, my executive team now. They took their seats around the table, nodding respectfully to me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed the room. "Thank you for coming. Today's meeting isn't about a pitch. It's about an announcement. Summit Industries is launching the largest digital transformation initiative in construction history, starting with all current Harrison Enterprises contracts." The room erupted in chaos. James was shouting something about family loyalty. Amanda had actual tears in her eyes. Father just kept staring at the numbers on the screen. "You can't take our contracts," James finally managed. "Actually," I pulled out a stack of documents. "I can. Most of your clients have already agreed to transfer their projects to Summit. They prefer our modern approach, our real-time monitoring, our cost-saving technologies. All the things you said would never work in construction." "This will destroy the company," Amanda whispered. "No," I corrected. "This will force it to evolve. You have 2 choices. Either adapt to the digital age, partner with Summit Industries, and learn how modern construction actually works, or become obsolete. And if we refuse," Father finally spoke. I smiled, the same smile he used to give me when explaining why my ideas wouldn't work. "Then watch as every major client you have switches to a company that's actually ready for the future. Your choice." The next few days unfolded exactly as I'd planned. Harrison Enterprises stock plummeted as news of the Morgan deal spread. Not just the loss of the $50 million contract, but the revelation that their biggest competitor was run by the daughter they'd so publicly dismissed. I sat in my Summit Industries office, watching multiple screens track the fallout. Client after client announcing their switch to our digital platforms, industry analysts praising our innovative approach, and most satisfyingly, Harrison Enterprises board members frantically trying to contain the damage. "Your father's here," Michael announced through the intercom. No appointment. I checked the security feed. Father stood in the lobby, looking smaller somehow. No power suit today. No air of authority. Just an old man realizing the world had shifted under his feet. "Send him up." The office fell silent as he entered. His eyes took in everything. The wall of screens, showing real-time project data, the holographic building models, the teams of young engineers working on tablets instead of paper blueprints. "This is quite an operation," he said finally. "It's what I tried to show you," I replied, not offering him a seat. 3 years ago, when I first proposed digital integration. He nodded slowly. "The board is meeting tomorrow. Emergency session." They're concerned. They should be. Summit just acquired Peterson Construction. Their digital infrastructure integrates perfectly with ours. "Peterson?" His face paled. "But they're our biggest supplier." "Where?" I corrected. Now they're part of Summit's vertical integration strategy, along with advanced materials tech, global logistics partners, and several other companies you depend on. "You're systematically dismantling everything we built." "No, Father. I'm building something better. Something that should have included Harrison Enterprises if you'd all just listened." My phone buzzed. Another client announcing their switch to Summit. Father flinched at the notification sound. "James resigned this morning," he said quietly. "Amanda's talking about selling her shares." "Smart move. They'll be worth half as much by next week." He sank into a chair without waiting for invitation. "What do you want, Victoria? Money? Power? Revenge?" I turned to face him fully. "I want what I've always wanted. To modernize construction. To bring this industry into the digital age. To build something meaningful." "By destroying your family's legacy?" "Legacy." I pulled up our latest project on the main screen. A revolutionary smart city development. "This is legacy, Father. Not clinging to outdated methods because that's how we've always done it. Not dismissing innovation because it's unfamiliar. Not voting out someone because their vision threatens your comfort." A notification popped up. Our stock had jumped another 10% on news of the Peterson acquisition. "The board," Father hesitated. "They're considering options. Merger possibilities." I smiled. "You mean they're hoping Summit will absorb Harrison Enterprises? Save them from becoming completely obsolete? Would you consider it?" "2 conditions," I said, pulling up a document I'd had prepared for weeks. "First, complete digital transformation. No compromises, no traditional holdouts. Second," I met his eyes, "I run it. All of it. No family votes, no board interference, no more dismissing ideas because they're different. The board won't like that. The board doesn't have a choice. In 3 months, Summit will control 60% of the construction technology market. In 6 months, any company not using our platforms will be effectively locked out of major contracts. You can be part of that future, or you can watch it happen from the sidelines." He stared at the document for a long moment. "You planned all this from the beginning?" "No," I corrected. "I planned to do it with you. You all chose to make me do it without you." My phone buzzed again. Pictures from James clearing out his office. Funny how karma works. If we agree, Father said slowly, what happens to the family? That depends on them. Amanda's actually quite good at project management. When she's not busy undermining me. James? Well, James should probably explore other opportunities. And you? Yes? You get to decide if you're ready to learn from your daughter. To admit that maybe, just maybe, the quiet one in the family meetings actually knew what she was talking about. He stood, straightening his jacket, a nervous habit I'd never seen before. The board meets at 9 tomorrow. I know. I own the building they're meeting in. As he turned to leave, he paused. Your grandfather, he would have been proud. Grandfather left me his private journals, I revealed. He wrote about seeing the future of construction, about wanting to modernize. You all were too busy protecting his old methods to realize you were betraying his actual vision. The door closed behind him softly. I turned back to my screens, to the empire I'd built while they thought I was failing. A message popped up from my team. Morgan Project groundbreaking ceremony next week. Press wants to know if Harrison Enterprises will be mentioned in the announcements. I thought about family, about legacy, about the future my grandfather had dreamed of. Yes, I typed back. Tell them it's a story about evolution, about how sometimes you have to tear down the old foundation to build something stronger. Because success isn't just about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. The family that voted me out, they'd learn that lesson tomorrow. And every day after, as they watch their quiet disappointment reshape an entire industry. I picked up my grandfather's old journal, reading his final entry. The future belongs to those brave enough to build it. Looking out over my city, at the cranes and buildings bearing my company's logo, I smiled. The future belonged to me now. And I was just getting started. The crystal glasses clinked against fine china as my mother set another perfect table for our mandatory Sunday dinner. The Bennett family image had to be maintained, even if some of us, meaning me, weren't living up to expectations. Emma, darling, my mother called from the dining room, do try to mention your little website less tonight. Your brother has important news about the company. I smoothed down my simple black dress, bought from my own online boutique, though they didn't know that. At 28, I was the family disappointment, the one who'd walked away from our family's luxury retail empire to start what they called my little internet hobby. The doorbell chimed. My brother Nathan's voice boomed through the foyer, followed by the click of his wife Sophia's designer heels. The golden child had arrived. There's my successful son, Dad announced, emerging from his study. How's the expansion going? Nathan straightened his bespoke suit, probably worth more than what they thought my entire business made in a month. Closing the deal this week. Bennett Luxury Group is about to become the biggest retail chain in 3 states. If they only knew about the emails I'd received this morning, about the acquisition that would make their expansion look like a corner store opening. Emma. Sophia air-kissed my cheek, still playing shop online. How quaint. I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. Something like that. Speaking of which, Mom interjected, arranging the silverware just so. Mrs. Harrison mentioned a lovely opening at their corporate office. Perfect for someone with your limited experience. Nathan laughed, the sound echoing through the formal dining room. Come on, Mom. Emma's too busy being an entrepreneur. What was it again, sis? Selling secondhand clothes on the internet? If he only knew about the algorithm I developed, the one revolutionizing online retail, the one major companies were desperately trying to acquire. the one that had just made me a billionaire in secret. Actually, I started, but Dad cut me off. Enough about Emma's hobby. Nathan, tell us more about the expansion. Real business, not this internet nonsense. I thought about the notification I'd received just before dinner. Bennett Luxury Group's stock had dropped another 5% today. Their traditional retail model was bleeding money, but they were too proud to see it. We're acquiring the Riverside Mall properties, Nathan boasted, cutting into his stake. Prime real estate. Old money. The kind of customers who'd never buy luxury goods online. I bit back a laugh. The latest data from my platform showed that 70% of luxury purchases were now happening digitally. But why spoil their illusions? That's wonderful, dear, Mom beamed. Unlike some people, you understand the importance of maintaining our family's reputation. My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A message from my CFO. Final papers signed. Acquisition complete. You now own controlling interest in Premier Capital. Premier Capital, the bank financing Nathan's expansion. The bank that was about to call in some very uncomfortable loans. Emma could learn a lot from you, Dad continued, swirling his expensive bourbon. Real business is about relationships, handshakes, looking people in the eye, not hiding behind a computer screen. Speaking of relationships, Sophia chimed in. Bradley Matthews is single again. He's a junior partner at Premier Capital now. Perfect for someone who needs direction. I smiled, thinking of the email I'd received from Bradley last week, begging for a meeting with the mysterious CEO of Nova Digital, my company's public face. He had no idea he was trying to pitch to the same woman he dismissed as not corporate material 3 years ago. I'm quite happy with my current direction, I said quietly. Nathan snorted. What direction? Your little website barely makes enough to pay rent. Meanwhile, Bennett Luxury is about to announce the biggest expansion in our history. I checked my watch. In exactly 12 hours, Premier Capital would announce a complete audit of all major loans, including the ones Nathan had taken out against inflated property values. How are the mall properties performing? I asked innocently. I heard traditional retail was struggling this quarter. That's because people like you are ruining real shopping, Mom sighed. All this online nonsense. No class, no sophistication. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my CFO. Premier Capital board meeting moved to tomorrow morning. They found the discrepancies. The future is digital, I said, more to myself than them. Either adapt or become obsolete. Listen to her? Nathan laughed. Playing Steve Jobs while the adults run real businesses. Tell me, sis, how many people does your little website employ? 2, 3? Try 15,000 across 3 continents. But they'd learn that soon enough. I do all right, I replied softly. Dad stood, raising his glass. To Bennett Luxury Group's expansion. To real success, built the right way. They all clinked glasses, not noticing that I hadn't raised mine. They never noticed much about me anymore. That was about to change. Oh, Nathan added, almost forgot. We're using your old college fund to secure the expansion loans. Not like you're using it for anything important. I set down my water glass carefully. Interesting choice. If they'd bothered to check, they'd have known that college fund had been empty for months. I had withdrawn it to buy my first shares of Premier Capital, starting the chain of events that would unfold tomorrow. Don't worry, dear. Mom patted my hand. There's always that job at Harrison's. Much more suitable than this online business fantasy. I stood, gathering my things. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. With what? Your web designer? Nathan smirked. Something like that, I smiled. By the way, Nathan, when was the last time you reviewed those loan documents from Premier Capital? Thoroughly, I mean. His smirk faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I shouldered my bag. Vintage Hermans, worth more than his car. Just something to think about before tomorrow's board meeting. As I walked out, I heard Mom ask, "What board meeting?" But I was already closing the door, smiling as my driver opened the car door. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of the Nova Digital headquarters downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the Bennett Luxury Group building across the street, where my family's empire was about to crumble. Premier Capital's board meeting starts in 10 minutes, my assistant Kate informed me, setting down my morning coffee. Nathan Bennett just arrived. He looks anxious. I pulled up the live security feed on my tablet. My brother, his perfect suit slightly rumpled, was pacing the Premier Capital lobby. No swagger today, no smirk. Just the growing realization that something was very wrong. The audit reports? I asked. Kate handed me a folder. Complete. The forensic accountants found everything. Inflated property valuations, hidden debts, creative accounting, all of it. I smiled, remembering Nathan's boast from last night about real business. Real fraud was more like it. Miss Nova, my CFO Michael appeared in the doorway, using my professional name. The other board members have arrived. Should we begin? I stood, straightening my designer suit. One that cost more than my entire family thought I made in a year. Let's not keep them waiting. The Premier Capital boardroom fell silent as I entered. Nathan, halfway through what appeared to be an impassioned defense, froze mid-sentence. Emma? What are you doing here? This is a private meeting, isn't? I took my seat at the head of the table. As majority shareholder of Premier Capital, I think I have every right to be here. The color drained from his face. Majority? What? I nodded to Michael, who distributed copies of the audit report. Let's talk about Bennett Luxury Group's loan applications, shall we? Specifically, the creative math used to secure them. This is ridiculous, Nathan sputtered. You sell clothes online. You can't possibly. Nova Digital, I cut him off, doesn't just sell clothes. We revolutionized e-commerce. That little website you mocked. It processes more luxury sales in an hour than your stores do in a month. The board members were flipping through the reports, their expressions growing darker with each page. Mr. Bennett, one of them spoke up. These discrepancies are significant. Nathan loosened his tie. There must be some mistake. Our family has been with Premier Capital for generations. Yes, I agreed. Which makes the fraud even more disappointing. Fraud? His voice cracked. Emma, you can't seriously. It's Ms. Nova in this room, I corrected. And yes, fraud. Systematic misrepresentation of assets, manipulation of property valuations, and that's just the beginning. I pulled up the real numbers on the boardroom screens. Bennett Luxury Group's true financial state was displayed in brutal detail: the failing stores, the mounting debts, the desperate attempts to maintain the facade of success. The loans are being called in, I announced. All of them. Bennett Luxury Group has 48 hours to provide full payment or collateral of equal value. That's impossible. Nathan stood, his carefully maintained composure shattering. You'll destroy the company, our family's legacy. The company was already destroying itself, I replied calmly. Refusing to adapt, clinging to outdated models, mocking digital innovation while the world moved online. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad. They must have heard. I ignored it. There is one option, I said, sliding a document across the table. Nova Digital is prepared to acquire Bennett Luxury Group at a very generous discount, considering the circumstances. Nathan grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. This is barely 10% of what we're worth. It's twice what you're actually worth, I corrected. The offer expires in 1 hour. After that, we go public with the audit. You planned this, he whispered. All of it. While we thought you were playing at business. I learned from the best. I smiled. Wasn't it Dad who always said, never let them see you coming? The boardroom door burst open. Dad stood there, looking like he'd aged 10 years since dinner last night. Mom hovered behind him. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her panic. What have you done? Dad demanded. I stood slowly, enjoying the shift in power. I built something real. Something that will survive in the digital age. Unlike your empire of overpriced retail spaces and outdated thinking. By betraying your family? No. I met his gaze steadily. By saving it from itself. The offer stands. Nova Digital acquires Bennett Luxury Group. We digitize the operation, save what can be saved, and bring the family business into the 21st century. Under your control, Mom said softly. Under competent control, I corrected. The choice is yours. Adapt or collapse. The next week unfolded like a perfectly executed business plan, which, of course, it was. Bennett Luxury Group's stock had been suspended from trading after the audit news leaked. My parents' carefully curated social circle was buzzing with whispers about the family's fall from grace. I sat in what used to be my father's office, now part of Nova Digital's expanding headquarters. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. The integration teams are ready, Kate reported. And your mother is here. Again. I checked the security feed. Mom stood in the lobby, looking lost without her usual air of superiority. 3 visits in a week, a record for someone who'd spent years pretending my business didn't exist. Send her up. She entered cautiously, taking in the transformed space. Gone were the heavy oak furniture and oil paintings of stern-faced Bennett patriarchs. Instead, smart screens displayed real-time sales data, global logistics maps, and the future of retail. This used to be your grandfather's office, she said softly. And now, it's mine. I gestured to a chair. What can I do for you, Mom? She sat, smoothing her designer dress. Last season's collection, I noticed. The small details that showed how far they'd fallen. Nathan's leaving for London, she announced. Sophia filed for divorce yesterday. Smart woman, I replied. Getting out before the legal proceedings begin. Legal? You're pressing charges against your own brother. I pulled up the complete audit report on my tablet. Fraud is fraud, Mom. The SEC doesn't care about family ties. He could go to prison. He should have thought about that before falsifying loan documents. I met her eyes. Or did you think those creative accounting techniques Dad taught him would never catch up? She flinched. Your father was only trying to protect the family legacy. By committing fraud. By teaching Nathan that rules don't apply to Bennett's. I laughed softly. Some legacy. My phone buzzed. Another message from Dad. Probably another attempt to negotiate better terms for the takeover. I ignored it, just like I'd ignored the last dozen. The country club is talking, Mom said, as if that still mattered. Mrs. Harrison asked if we'd be giving up our membership. Actually, I smiled. Nova Digital just bought the club. We're modernizing it, making it more inclusive. The horror on her face was almost comical, but the traditions are as outdated as Bennett Luxury's business model. I stood, walking to the window. The world changed, Mom. I tried to tell you all for years, but you were too busy mocking my little website to listen. And now you own everything, she whispered. Not everything, just the parts worth saving. My phone lit up with an alert. Nova Digital's stock had just hit another record high. The market loved our acquisition strategy, our technology, our vision for the future. What happens now? Mom asked. I turned back to face her. Now, Bennett Luxury Group becomes a division of Nova Digital. We'll salvage what we can, modernize what works, discard what doesn't. The family name will survive, just not the way you all planned. And your brother. Nathan has two choices: cooperate with the SEC investigation in exchange for leniency, or face the full consequences of his actions. His choice. She stood, suddenly looking very old. We should have listened to you. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. Your father. He wants to meet. To discuss terms. I smiled. The terms were clear. He can keep his board seat, non-voting, of course, and a modest salary, in exchange for his silence and cooperation. It's killing him, she said, watching you dismantle everything he built. I'm not dismantling it, Mom. I'm evolving it. That little online hobby you all laughed at? It's the future. While you were all clinging to handshakes and corner offices, I was building an empire that will actually last. My phone buzzed again. The integration team needed decisions on which Bennett stores to close first. You should go, I said. The country club's new membership committee meets today. Lots of changes coming. She paused at the door. Will you still come to Sunday dinner? I thought about all those dinners spent being belittled, dismissed, mocked. No, I said finally. But you're welcome to schedule a meeting with my assistant if you'd like to discuss business. After she left, I stood at the window, watching the city that had once belonged to Bennett Luxury Group and now answered to Nova Digital. My empire, built one click at a time while they laughed at my little website. Kate appeared with the afternoon reports. Your father's lawyer called again, and the SEC wants to schedule another interview with Nathan. Schedule them both, I said. And Kate, send my mother a gift basket. Something from our new luxury online collection. Last season style, of course. She needs to learn about digital shopping somehow. Because success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about teaching them how right you've been all along, even if the lesson costs them everything they thought they owned. The Bennett family legacy would survive, just not as they'd imagined it. Instead of handshakes and corner offices, it would thrive in algorithms and innovation. And the daughter they dismissed as playing businesswoman, she wasn't playing anymore. The roast beef was perfectly cooked, but I could barely taste it. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had always been a performance. Mom's carefully arranged table settings, Dad's practiced anecdotes about the business, my brother Marcus's strategic laughs at all the right moments. But tonight felt different. The air was thick with anticipation, like everyone knew something I didn't. I was pushing peas around my plate when Dad cleared his throat. That sound, I'd heard it 1,000 times before big announcements. Usually about quarterly profits or new acquisitions. Never anything good for me. Emily, he said, setting down his wine glass. "We need to discuss the future of Harrison Global." I looked up, meeting his eyes across the mahogany table that had witnessed 25 years of family dynamics. The same table where he'd once told me I was too emotional to handle client meetings, where he'd suggested I stick to administrative work despite my MBA from Wharton. "What about it?" I kept my voice neutral, even as my stomach tightened. "Your brother has shown exceptional leadership potential." Dad smiled at Marcus, who sat straighter in his chair, preening. "He's landed 3 major accounts this quarter alone. The board agrees. It's time to start the succession planning." Mom beamed, reaching over to squeeze Marcus's hand. "We're so proud of you, honey." I took a slow sip of water, letting the ice clink against my teeth. 3 major accounts. They didn't know those accounts had come from my quiet work behind the scenes, my late nights restructuring proposals, my relationships carefully built over years. "Marcus will take over as CEO within the year," Dad continued. "It's the right move for the company. You understand, don't you, Emily? You're just too soft for business, too hesitant. Business requires decisive action." Marcus smirked slightly. "Don't worry, sis. I'll find a place for you somewhere in the company. Maybe in HR. That seems more your speed." I set my fork down carefully, the silver making no sound against the fine china. They had no idea that while they'd been dismissing me as the soft daughter, I'd been building something of my own. Something that would make their 3 major accounts look like pocket change. "Excuse me," I said quietly, standing. "I need to make a call." "Emily?" Mom started, her voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Don't be dramatic. This is a family dinner." I smiled, the kind of smile that comes from knowing something they don't. "It's just a quick business call. I'll be right back." Outside on the wraparound porch, the summer evening hummed with cicadas. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Hello, James. It's Emily Harrison. I think it's time to move forward with what we discussed." "Yes, all of it. Start the paperwork tonight." I ended the call and looked through the dining room window. They were all laughing now, probably already planning Marcus's coronation. Dad raised his glass in another toast. They had no idea that while they'd been grooming Marcus to run Harrison Global, I'd spent the last 3 years quietly building Vertex Solutions into their biggest client's preferred vendor. No idea that I owned 70% of the company that provided the technology backbone for their entire operation. No idea that by tomorrow morning, when James, my lawyer, filed the paperwork, their precious succession plan would crumble like the apple pie Mom was now serving. I walked back inside, taking my seat just as Dad was telling one of his favorite stories about Marcus's first big sale. "Everything okay?" Mom asked, more out of obligation than concern. "Perfect," I replied, finally taking a bite of the roast beef. It really was perfectly cooked, just finalizing some business details. "Business details?" Marcus laughed. "What business could you possibly be handling on a Sunday night?" I dabbed my lips with the linen napkin. "You'll find out soon enough." Dad frowned slightly. "Emily, if this is about the succession plan." "Not at all," I cut him off smoothly. "I completely understand your decision. Marcus is clearly the right choice to lead Harrison Global. I mean, those 3 major accounts he landed, impressive." Marcus practically glowed with pride. "Well, someone needs to keep the company growing." "Absolutely," I agreed. "Growth is crucial. Speaking of which, how's the Anderson account? Still our biggest client." Of course, Dad jumped in. 20 years of partnership. They're locked in with us for the long haul. I checked my watch. In exactly 12 hours, that long haul would hit a very sudden stop sign. More wine, anyone? Mom offered, trying to steer us back to safer waters. No, thank you, I said, standing again. I should actually head out. Early meeting tomorrow. On a Monday? Marcus scoffed. With who? I grabbed my purse, slinging it over my shoulder. Oh, just the CEO of Anderson Corp. Nothing major. The silence that followed me out was almost as satisfying as what I knew tomorrow would bring. Almost. That night, in my downtown apartment, I sat at my desk reviewing the documents James had sent over. Everything was in order. The merger agreement, the technology transfer contracts, the new service terms. 3 years of careful planning, all leading to this moment. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Hope you're not too upset about dinner. It's just business, sis. Nothing personal. I smiled at the screen. He was right about one thing. It was just business. And by this time tomorrow, they'd learn exactly what kind of businesswoman their soft daughter had become. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my father was probably raising another toast to Marcus. Mom was probably already planning the announcement party, and the board members were patting themselves on the back for choosing the right successor. Let them celebrate tonight. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of meeting. I poured myself a small glass of the whiskey I'd been saving, the same brand Dad always said was too strong for a woman's palate. The liquid burned satisfyingly as I pulled out my phone one last time. A quick text to James. Everything ready for tomorrow. His response came immediately. All set. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. Anderson CEO confirmed for 10. You sure about this? I typed back. Absolutely. Time to show them what too soft looks like. Then I turned off my phone, settled into my favorite chair, and waited for morning to arrive. The calm before the storm felt almost electric. Tomorrow, Harrison Global would learn that while they'd been underestimating me, I'd been building an empire. Tomorrow, they discovered that their biggest client wasn't just partnering with my company. They were merging with it. Tomorrow, they'd finally understand what they'd missed all these years. That sometimes the quiet ones, the soft ones, the ones you dismiss and overlook, they're the ones you should have been watching all along. But tonight I would sleep peacefully, knowing that the next family dinner would be very, very different. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes before life-changing moments. I dressed carefully, a charcoal gray suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back sleek and professional. No flash, no drama, just quiet confidence. My phone had exploded overnight. 27 missed calls from Dad, 15 from Marcus, countless texts demanding explanations. I ignored them all. They'd get their answers soon enough. At exactly 8:45 a.m., I walked into Harrison Global's headquarters. The security guard did a double take. I hadn't been here in months. Not since Dad had suggested I take some time to find myself. The elevator ride to the 30th floor felt surreal. Behind these steel doors, I'd spent countless moments swallowing my pride, hiding my ambitions, playing the role they'd cast me in. Not today. Emily, Jessica, Dad's assistant, nearly dropped her coffee when she saw me. The board meeting's about to start. Your father specifically said. I know what he said. I cut in smoothly. But I think they'll want to hear what I have to say. The boardroom doors were closed, but I could hear voices inside. Marcus's distinctive laugh carried through, probably telling another exaggerated story about his business prowess. I checked my watch. 8:57 a.m. Right on schedule. Emily. Dad's voice boomed as I pushed open the doors. What are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned to me. The board members, Marcus and Dad, all wearing various expressions of confusion and annoyance. Good morning, everyone, I said calmly, taking the empty seat at the far end of the table. Please, don't let me interrupt. Marcus stood up, his face reddening. Dad, this is ridiculous. She can't jest. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out my laptop. I can. And you might want to sit down for this. Now listen here, Dad started, but his words were cut off by a sharp knock at the door. James walked in, followed by Michael Anderson, CEO of Anderson Corp., our biggest client, and two people I knew Gabord would recognize, the heads of Anderson's legal and technology departments. What's going on? Dad demanded, standing now. Michael, we didn't have a meeting scheduled until 10 o'clock, Michael finished, checking his watch. We're a bit early. Hope you don't mind. The color drained from Dad's face as Michael took the seat next to me. The others remained standing, creating a powerful visual I knew wouldn't be lost on the board. Emily, Dad's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. What have you done? I opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's display screen. Why don't I show you? The first slide appeared. Vertex Solutions logo alongside Anderson Corp.'s with the merger announcement date. Today. 3 years ago, I began, my voice steady. While you were all busy deciding I was too soft for business, I founded Vertex Solutions. We specialize in integrated technology solutions for enterprise-level operations. Sound familiar? It should. We've been handling Anderson Corp.'s entire digital infrastructure for the past 2 years. Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. This is a joke, right? There's no way you... Vertex Solutions, Michael Anderson cut in, has revolutionized our operations, increased efficiency by 40%, reduced costs by 35%, and yes, your sister built it from the ground up. I clicked to the next slide. The merger details. The numbers were staggering, even to me, and I'd been looking at them for weeks. As of this morning, I continued, Vertex Solutions and Anderson Corp. Are merging. The paperwork has already been filed. And our first order of business? I paused, letting the moment stretch. Reviewing all existing vendor contracts. The silence in the room was deafening. Dad's face had gone from red to white. Marcus looked like he might be sick. You can't do this, Dad finally managed. The Anderson account. We'd had it for 20 years. 19, I corrected. And yes, I can. In fact, I nodded to James, who began distributing folders to the board members I already have. The folders contained what I knew would be their worst nightmare, a complete audit of Harrison Global's service delivery to Anderson Corp. Over the past 3 years. Every missed deadline, every overcharged invoice, every technical failure that my team at Vertex had quietly fixed, while Harrison Global took the credit. This is personal, Marcus accused, his voice shaking. You're doing this because of last night. I looked at him calmly. No, Marcus, I'm doing this because it's good business. Something you'd understand if you'd actually landed those 3 major accounts yourself, instead of taking credit for my work. A board member, Mr. Thompson, I noted, was already flipping through the audit report, his face growing grimmer by the page. These numbers. This is accurate? Every page, Michael confirmed. We've been tracking the discrepancies for months. The only reason we didn't terminate our contract with Harrison Global earlier was out of respect for our relationship with Emily. Dad collapsed back into his chair, looking suddenly old. Emily, please. We can talk about this. Whatever you want. A position on the board, equity in the company. I don't want anything from Harrison Global, I said, standing. I have my own company. One that I'd built without nepotism, without taking credit for others' work, and without underestimating people because of their gender or their supposed softness. I gathered my things, nodding to Michael and James. The board has 24 hours to review those documents. After that, we'll need your decision on whether Harrison Global wishes to bid for a new contract under the merged company's terms, or if you prefer to terminate the relationship entirely. As I turned to leave, Marcus found his voice. You'll regret this when the family finds out. The family? I laughed softly. You mean the same family that spent years telling me I wasn't cut out for business. The same family that was ready to push me into HR because I was too soft to lead. I reached the door and turned back one last time. I think they'll be very interested to learn just how wrong they were. The last thing I saw as the doors closed was Dad's face, a mixture of shock, anger, and something I'd never seen before. Respect. In the elevator down, Michael turned to me. That went well. I smiled. It did. Thank you for coming in person. Are you kidding? I wouldn't have missed this for the world. He paused. You know they'll try to fight back. Let them, I said, checking my phone. The news of the merger was already hitting the business wires. Harrison Global stock would take a hit the moment the market opened. I'm not afraid of a fight. Back in my car, I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Years of careful planning, of swallowing my pride, of building something in silence, it had all led to this moment. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. What have you done? Your father is devastated. How could you do this to your family? I started typing a response, then deleted it. Some answers couldn't be explained in a text. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. Instead, I called my assistant at Vertex. Sarah? Yes, everything's done. Start the next phase. And Sarah? Book me a table for one at La Maison tonight. I think this calls for a celebration. The day wasn't over yet. There would be more meetings, more accusations, more attempts to paint me as the villain. But for now, I had shown them exactly who I was. Not the soft, hesitant daughter they dismissed, but the businesswoman who'd outmaneuvered them all. And this was just the beginning. The aftermath was even more spectacular than I'd anticipated. By Tuesday morning, Harrison Global stock had dropped 18%. The business papers were running headlines like Family Dynasty Disrupted. Harrison Global loses biggest client to founder's daughter, and Vertex Solutions, the silent giant that changed the game. I sat in my office at Vertex, watching the city wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone had finally stopped buzzing. Either they'd run out of things to say, or they'd realized I wasn't going to respond. The silence felt like victory. Sarah knocked on my door. Your 9 a.m. is here. I nodded, straightening my desk. Send them in. The Harrison Global board members filed in. Thompson, Martinez, and Chen. No Dad. No Marcus. Interesting. Emily, Thompson began. looking uncomfortable in my space. We've reviewed everything. And I kept my voice neutral, professional. The board has voted. We want to negotiate new terms with Vertex Anderson. He paused, without current management's involvement. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning your father and brother have been asked to step down, effective immediately. The words hung in the air. I hadn't expected this, hadn't planned for it. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. They'd made their choices. I see, I said carefully. And what exactly are you proposing? Martinez leaned forward. We want to discuss a potential merger. Harrison Global and Vertex Anderson. Combined resources, shared leadership. I almost laughed. You want me to save the company? We want to survive, Chen said bluntly. Your father's leadership style, it's outdated. The board should have seen it sooner. I stood, walking to the window. Below, I could see the Harrison Global building, the same building where I'd been told countless times I wasn't good enough. No, I said finally, turning back to them. No. Thompson looked shocked. Emily, this could be an incredible opportunity. Harrison Global needs to learn to stand on its own, I cut in. Without nepotism, without relying on family names. I'm happy to negotiate fair contract terms for future business, but a merger? No. They left looking defeated, but I felt lighter. This wasn't about destroying Harrison Global. It was about forcing change. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Mom. Security called, Sarah announced. Your mother's downstairs. Should I send her up? Mom looked out of place in my modern office, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Her eyes took in everything. The views, the sleek furniture, the clear signs of success she'd never bothered to notice before. So this is where you've been hiding, she said, attempting her usual dismissive tone but failing. Building, Mom. Not hiding. She sat down, smoothing her skirt. Your father's devastated. The board, they're forcing him out. Your brother too. Is this what you wanted? What I wanted? I felt years of suppressed anger rising. What I wanted was for my family to see me, to acknowledge my capabilities, to stop treating me like I was somehow less because I didn't fit Dad's idea of a business leader. We were protecting you. No, I cut her off. You were controlling me. There's a difference. She fell silent, looking at the magazine on my desk, my face on the cover, the headline reading The Silent Revolution. How Emily Harrison changed the game. I don't even know who you are anymore, she whispered. That's the problem, Mom. You never did. After she left, I called James. How's it looking? Harrison Global's board is in chaos. They're announcing your father's retirement tomorrow, spinning it as a planned succession. Marcus is being quietly let go. I closed my eyes. And the family? Your cousins have been calling. Apparently, there's a lot of money tied up in Harrison Global stock. They're not happy. They'll survive, I said, though the weight of it all was finally hitting me. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. The same house where just days ago they'd announced my brother's succession. The same dining room where they'd dismissed me one final time. Dad opened the door before I could knock. He looked older, tired, but there was something else in his eyes. Emily, he said softly, I suppose we need to talk. Inside, the house was quiet. No Mom, no Marcus, just me and the man who'd spent years underestimating me. You could have told me, he said as we sat in his study, about Vertex. about all of it. Would you have listened? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he admitted finally. I wouldn't have believed it. That's the problem, isn't it? I nodded, feeling tears threatening but holding them back. You never saw me, Dad. Not really. I saw what I wanted to see, he said. A daughter who needed protection. Instead, he gestured vaguely at me. Instead, you were building an empire right under my nose. I learned from watching you, I said. Every mistake, every success. I just did it differently. He picked up a photo from his desk, me at graduation, young and hopeful. The board's right, you know. I'm done. Harrison Global needs new leadership. I know. Marcus, he sighed heavily. He's not taking it well. He never earned it, Dad. Any of it. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of years of misunderstanding between us. I'm proud of you, he said finally, the words sounding strange from his lips. I know it doesn't matter now, but I am. I stood to leave, pausing at the door. It matters, Dad. It's just too late. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, press conferences, and reorganization. Harrison Global announced its new leadership. Young, diverse, merit-based. Their stock began to recover. Marcus left the country, reportedly traveling in Europe. Mom stopped trying to make me feel guilty. Vertex Anderson flourished. Our merger became a case study in business schools. The Harrison method, they called it. Building success quietly, strategically, without fanfare until the moment of revelation. 1 year later, I sat in my office, looking at a new email from Dad. He'd started a small consulting firm, helping family businesses navigate succession planning. His message was simple. I tell them all about you. About how I almost lost everything because I couldn't see past my own prejudices. Some of them listen. Thank you for teaching me the hardest lesson of my life. Love, Dad. I smiled, clicking reply. Dinner this Sunday? Just us. His response came quickly. I'd like that. As I looked out at the city skyline, I thought about that Sunday dinner a year ago. The daughter they thought was too soft had turned out to be the strongest of them all. Not through force or drama, but through quiet determination and strategic patience. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others have built. It's about building something better yourself. Something so undeniable that they have no choice but to finally see you for who you really are. I picked up my phone and dialed. Sarah? Clear my schedule for Sunday evening. I'm having dinner with my father. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was something like progress. And in business, as in family, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. I stared at the cream-colored envelope sitting on my desk, the gold-embossed lettering catching the morning light. Annual Morrison Family Christmas Dinner, it read, followed by an address I knew all too well. 782 Oakwood Drive. The family estate where I'd spent countless holidays being reminded of my place in the hierarchy. My fingers traced the edge of the invitation. 3 years had passed since I'd attended their precious dinner. 3 years of building, planning, and waiting. Now holding this invitation felt different. This time, I wasn't the charity case cousin they'd all whispered about. I was the CEO of Walker Industries, and as of tomorrow morning, the new owner of Morrison Technologies. Though they didn't know that part yet. Ms. Walker? My assistant, Sarah's voice, came through the intercom. The final acquisition papers just arrived from legal. Send them in, I replied, sliding the invitation into my drawer. Sarah entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor of my penthouse office. She carried a thick folder marked confidential and wore the kind of smile that meant good news. "Everything's in order," she said, placing the folder on my desk. The board approved the buyout unanimously. They never realized Walker Industries was behind the holding company. I opened the folder, scanning the documents that would transfer ownership of my uncle's company to me. Uncle James, who'd laughed when I asked for a job after college. "We need serious people here, Emma," he'd said, "not dreamers living off family handouts." The memory still stung, but now it fueled me. "Sarah," I said, signing the final page, "clear my schedule for Christmas Day. I'll be attending a family dinner." She raised an eyebrow. "The Morrisons? Are you sure?" I smiled, remembering my cousin Blake's words from the last dinner I attended. "When are you going to stop embarrassing the family and do something with your life?" "Oh yes," I replied. "It's time they learned what I've done with my life." The week before Christmas passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. The acquisition was set to complete at exactly 2 p.m. on Christmas Day. Right around the time my family would be serving turkey and judgment in equal portions. I chose my outfit carefully that morning. A simple black dress that probably cost more than my cousin Blake's monthly salary, though you'd never guess by looking at it. No flashy labels, no obvious signs of wealth. Let them think I was still struggling. The reveal would be sweeter that way. As I pulled up to the mansion in my modest car, not the Bentley I usually drove, memories flooded back. Every Christmas dinner, every snide comment, every time they'd made me feel small. "Emma," my Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the driveway, sticky sweet with fake concern. "We weren't sure you'd come. Times must be difficult." I smiled, clutching my simple handbag that held nothing but my phone and the acquisition papers. "Thank you for inviting me, Aunt Patricia." Inside, the house smelled of pine and pretension. Crystal glasses clinked as relatives milled about, their designer clothes and jewelry competing for attention. My cousin Blake stood by the fireplace, holding court with his usual admirers. "Well, look who it is," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The prodigal cousin returns. Still working at that startup, Emma? Or have you finally found a real job?" I kept my face neutral. If he only knew that his real job at Morrison Technologies would belong to me in less than 2 hours. "I'm managing," I said quietly, playing my part. Uncle James appeared, drink in hand. "Emma, surprised to see you here. Though I suppose free dinner is hard to pass up these days." The room tittered with polite laughter. I took a seat at the massive dining table, carefully arranged with the best china and crystal. As always, they'd placed me near the kitchen door, the subtle positioning of the family disappointment. Aunt Patricia began serving turkey, making sure everyone knew she'd had it specially prepared by a chef who trained in Paris. The conversation flowed around me, mostly about business deals and vacation homes. Speaking of business, Blake announced, "We just closed a major acquisition at Morrison. Dad's company is about to double in size." I bit back a smile. The acquisition he was talking about was a smokescreen, a small deal we'd let them think they were winning, while we quietly bought up their shares through various shell companies. "Still living off handouts?" my cousin Jessica asked, not even trying to hide her smirk as she passed the cranberry sauce. "I heard you were seen looking at apartments in the East Side. Bit above your means, isn't it?" I checked my watch. 1:58 p.m. Almost time. "You know," Blake continued, swirling his wine, "if you need help finding something more suitable to your situation, I know some affordable neighborhoods." 2:00 p.m. right on schedule, the doorbell rang. The room fell quiet. No one was expected at this hour. "I'll get it," Aunt Patricia said, but I stood up. "No, please. Allow me." I walked to the door, feeling their eyes on my back. Opening it, I found Sarah standing there in her impeccable suit, tablet in hand. "Ms. Walker," she said crisply, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your acquisition of Morrison Technologies is complete. The board has been notified, and the press release goes out in 5 minutes." The silence behind me was deafening. I turned to face my family, finally allowing myself to smile. "Thank you, Sarah. Please let the board know I'll be making some changes, starting with the leadership." Uncle James's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Blake's face had gone completely white. What is she talking about?" Aunt Patricia whispered. I pulled out my phone, showing them the press release that was about to go live. "Walker Industries acquires Morrison Technologies in surprise takeover." "Walker Industries," Blake stammered. "But that's my company. I finished for him. The one I built while you were all too busy mocking me to notice. Now, shall we discuss those affordable neighborhoods you mentioned? Because I believe you'll all be looking for new jobs soon." The turkey was getting cold, but suddenly, no one was interested in eating. And this was just the beginning. The room froze. Silverware clattered against china as hands went limp with shock. Uncle James stumbled to his feet, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "This is impossible," he sputtered. "Walker Industries is a multi-billion-dollar company. They've been buying up tech firms across the country. You couldn't possibly." I pulled out the acquisition papers from my handbag, laying them carefully between the turkey and cranberry sauce. "Would you like to see the documentation, Uncle James? Or perhaps you prefer to check your email? The board should have notified you by now." As if on cue, phones started buzzing around the table. The press release had gone live. Blake lunged for his phone, fingers trembling as he pulled up the announcement. "Emma Walker, CEO of Walker Industries, announces complete acquisition of Morrison Technologies." He read aloud, voice cracking. "This is some kind of joke. Like when you told the board I wasn't qualified for an entry-level position." I asked, maintaining eye contact. "No, cousin. This isn't a joke. This is business." Aunt Patricia gripped the back of her chair, knuckles white. But you were struggling. Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car." I smiled, remembering all the times they'd commented on my modest lifestyle. "That apartment? It's one of 50 properties I own in the city. The car? A choice, not a necessity. You see, while you were all busy flaunting your wealth, I was building mine." Sarah stepped forward, tablet still in hand. "Ms. Walker, the transition team is ready. Would you like me to begin implementing the leadership changes now?" Uncle James slammed his hand on the table. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just walk in here and—" "I can." I cut him off calmly. "And I will. But first, let me share a story, since we're having such a lovely family dinner." I took my seat again, smoothing my dress. The power shift in the room was palpable. Every eye was fixed on me, including those of relatives who'd barely acknowledged my existence for years. 6 years ago, I came to you with a business proposal. I began, looking directly at Uncle James. A digital payment processing system that could revolutionize how small businesses handle transactions. You laughed me out of your office, said I was playing entrepreneur. Remember? He swallowed hard, but said nothing. So I took my proposal elsewhere. Built it myself. That system now handles over $50 billion in annual transactions. But that was just the beginning. I paused, taking a sip of water. While you were all busy mocking my startup, I was acquiring companies across 3 continents, always through holding companies, always quietly. Morrison Technologies was just the latest piece of the puzzle. Why? Blake's voice was barely a whisper. Why not tell us? I turned to him, remembering every snide comment, every deliberate exclusion. Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success isn't about showing off. It's about substance. Something this family seems to have forgotten. Sarah cleared her throat softly. The press is requesting comments, Ms. Walker, and the board members are asking about tomorrow's transition meeting. Tell them I'll issue a statement after dinner, I replied. Family comes first, after all. Isn't that right, Aunt Patricia? My aunt, who'd always insisted on family loyalty while treating me like an outsider, could only stare at her plate. Now, I continued, let's discuss the changes coming to Morrison Technologies. First, the leadership team will be restructured. Blake, your position as Vice President of Sales is being eliminated. Uncle James, you'll be stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. You can't do this. Uncle James found his voice again. The board has already approved everything. I finished for him. They were quite impressed with Walker Industries' track record. Unlike Morrison's recent performance, Jessica, who'd made the comment about handouts earlier, pushed her chair back. This is ridiculous. I'm calling our lawyers. Feel free, I smiled. They've already reviewed and approved the acquisition. But while you're at it, you might want to call a recruiter too. Your position is also being eliminated. The room erupted in chaos. Voices raised in protest, threats of lawsuits, pleas for reconsideration. I let it wash over me, remembering all the times I'd sat quietly while they belittled my dreams. Sarah stepped closer. Should I have security on standby? That won't be necessary, I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. My family may have forgotten their manners, but I'm sure they can handle this professionally. Can't you? The silence that followed was deafening. Now, I stood, straightening my simple black dress. I believe there's dessert. Aunt Patricia always serves her famous apple pie at Christmas. Though I suspect it's not actually homemade, is it? The bakery on 5th Street does excellent work. Aunt Patricia's face flushed. Another carefully maintained illusion shattered. Before we continue, I pulled out a stack of envelopes from my bag. I have some documents for each of you. Severance packages, non-disclosure agreements, and terms for your departures. I'm being quite generous, more generous than you've ever been to me. You have until the end of dinner to decide. I began passing out the envelopes, watching as trembling hands opened them. The amounts inside were substantial. I wasn't interested in revenge, just reorganization. One more thing, I added, returning to my seat. Those non-disclosure agreements, they include social media. So all those nasty posts about my failed career might want to disappear before midnight. Blake looked up from his envelope, his face ashen. You knew about those? I know everything, I replied simply. I had to learn to pay attention to details when no one was paying attention to me. The rest of dinner passed in stunned silence, broken only by the occasional quiet sob or whispered consultation between family members. The turkey grew cold, the expensive wine untouched. As Sarah had predicted, it was quite an interesting Christmas dinner indeed. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 4, its deep chimes echoing through the tension-filled dining room. I watched as my family members shuffled through their severance papers, their faces cycling through shock, anger, and finally, the sweetest part, fear. You have until New Year's Day to clear out your offices, I said, standing up. Generous, considering how quickly you showed me the door 6 years ago. Uncle James, who hadn't touched his food since the revelation, finally spoke. His voice had lost its usual pompous tone. Emma, surely we can discuss this. We're family. I turned to him slowly, letting his words hang in the air. Family? Let's talk about family, Uncle James. When Aunt Marie died, and I needed help with Mom's medical bills, where was family then? When I slept in my car for 3 months while building my company, did family notice? You slept in your car? Aunt Patricia interrupted, her perfectly made-up face crumpling. But why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? I asked quietly. Or would you have used it as another reason to mock me at Sunday brunch? The silence that followed was answer enough. Sarah stepped forward again. Ms. Walker, the board is requesting an immediate video conference, and Mr. Sterling from the Times is asking for an exclusive. I nodded, then turned back to my family. You'll find complete instructions in your packets. The transition team will assist you with the handover. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Blake, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stood up. Wait. Just wait. He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he pulled up something. Is this why you were at the Thompson merger last month? In the background of this photo. That's you, isn't it? I glanced at the society page photo he'd found. Indeed, I was visible in the background, speaking with the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country. Yes, unlike some people, I prefer to do my work quietly. But you were wearing, he trailed off, staring at my simple black dress. A Channel couture gown worth more than your annual salary. I finished for him. Yes, I just choose not to flaunt it at family dinners. Jessica, who had been frantically texting under the table, looked up with wide eyes. I just checked Forbes. Walker Industries, you're worth more than this entire family combined, I confirmed. Though that's not the point. The point is what you do with power, once you have it. I picked up my handbag, a handmade piece that cost more than their monthly mortgages, and prepared to leave. But first, I had one more thing to say. You know what the real irony is? I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. If any of you had bothered to really see me, to listen when I came to you with ideas, you could have been part of this. Instead, you chose to judge, to mock, to exclude. That was your choice. Now I'm making mine. Aunt Patricia burst into tears. But what will people say? The scandal. People already know, I replied. They've known for years. I'm quite well known in business circles. You just never bothered to look beyond your own small world to notice. I turned to Sarah. Please ensure everyone signs their NDAs before leaving. And have security start changing the access codes tomorrow morning. Yes, Ms. Walker. And your dinner appointment? Keep it. I think I've lost my appetite here. As I walked toward the door, Uncle James called out one last time. Emma, please. Give me a chance to make this right. I paused, hand on the doorknob. You had 15 years of chances, Uncle James. Now it's my turn to run things. The drive home was quiet. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of my modest car, efficiently working through emails on her tablet. The press release has gone viral, she reported. Your family's social media accounts have all gone private in the last hour. I smiled slightly. Have there been any calls from them yet? 17. Mostly from Blake and your uncle. Should I continue blocking them? Yes. They can go through proper channels now, just like they always made me do. We pulled up to my real home, not the small apartment they knew about, but my actual residence, a penthouse overlooking the city. As the private elevator climbed to the top floor, Sarah cleared her throat. Ms. Walker? Was it worth the wait? Planning all this for so long. I thought about the years of careful preparation, of building my empire in silence, of watching and waiting for the perfect moment. You know what my grandmother used to say before she died, I replied, stepping into my expansive living room. Success is the best revenge, but timing is everything. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city I now partially owned. Somewhere down there, my family was realizing that the person they dismissed for so long had become the one person they couldn't afford to ignore. Sarah, send flowers to the family tomorrow. White lilies, Aunt Patricia's favorite, include a card. What should it say? I smiled, remembering all the Christmas cards they'd sent over the years, always signed with false warmth and hidden barbs. Keep it simple. Just write, Merry Christmas. Looking forward to a productive new year. Best regards, your new CEO. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The restructuring, the meetings, the press conferences. But tonight, I had given myself the one gift my family had never managed to give me. Respect. And that was worth more than all the Christmas dinners in the world. The crystal chandelier in my parents' dining room cast judgmental shadows across the birthday dinner set. Everything had to be perfect for my father's 60th. Perfect place settings, perfect wine pairings, and of course, perfect children. Well, almost perfect. Olivia, darling. My mother's voice carried that familiar note of disappointment as I walked in. Couldn't you have worn something more appropriate? I glanced down at my simple black blazer and tailored pants. No designer labels, no flashy brands, exactly the image I'd carefully cultivated for the past 5 years while building my empire in secret. It's cleaned and pressed, Mom, I replied, taking my assigned seat, the one furthest from Dad, naturally. My sister Victoria swept in, Hermes bag swinging, followed by her investment banker husband James. Their entrance was perfectly timed, as always, to make my arrival look even more inadequate. Traffic was horrible, Victoria announced, air-kissing Mom's cheek. But we closed the Henderson merger today, Daddy. 7 figures. She shot me a smug look. How's your little tech job, Liv? I smiled, thinking about the email I'd received just hours ago from my CFO. Our latest acquisition had pushed the company's valuation to $4.2 billion. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. Oh, you know, I said vaguely, still coding. My brother Michael arrived last, his surgeon's ego filling the room before he did. Sorry, I'm late. Saving lives. You know how it is. He loosened his Rolex, last year's model, I noticed, and took his place at Dad's right hand. Well, Mom began, nodding to the staff to serve. At least some of our children understand the importance of proper careers. Dad barely looked up from his phone. The Anderson boy, you remember him, Olivia? He's made partner at Goldman already. Such a shame you turned down his proposal. Ah, yes, Bradley Anderson. The man they practically arranged my marriage to, right before I walked away from their carefully planned future for me. He tried to buy into my company last month through his family's investment firm. I turned him down, again. Still working at that startup. Michael asked, cutting into his Wagyu beef. What is it you do again? Customer service? I'm the CEO, actually. Founder of Nova Technologies, the fastest growing AI company in North America. But I just nodded. Something like that. Olivia. Mom sighed, sharing a meaningful look with Victoria. We're just worried about you. Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car, you had such potential. If they only knew that tiny apartment was actually the penthouse of a building I owned, or that the old car was a deliberate choice to maintain my cover. Speaking of potential, Victoria chimed in, James's firm is always hiring. Entry level, of course, but that's kind of you, I said, checking my phone discreetly. A message from my PR team. Forbes article goes live at 8:00 p.m. I glanced at the ornate clock on the wall. 7:52 p.m. At least consider it. Dad finally looked at me. You're not getting any younger. And that computer hobby of yours. Hobby? Michael laughed. That's generous. More like hiding from real responsibility. 7:55 p.m. You know, I said carefully, speaking of responsibility, how's the hospital's new AI diagnostic system working out, Michael? He frowned. Been a nightmare, actually. Some new tech company's software. Nobody can figure out how to make it work properly. I bit back a smile. That would be my company's software. The same system he dismissed as basic coding when I tried to explain it to him last Christmas. 7:58 p.m. Victoria's phone chimed. She never could resist checking her notifications, even at dinner. Her perfectly maintained facade cracked as she stared at the screen. That's impossible, she whispered. What is it, darling? Mom asked. Victoria's hands shook as she turned her phone around. The Forbes headline glowed clearly. Nova Technologies CEO Olivier Bnaet join as WRLD's Youngest BILIOAAIELIST. Net worth $4.2 billion. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Michael's fork clattered against his plate. James's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. Dad's phone slipped from his fingers. But you work in customer service, Michael stammered. I took a slow sip of water. Actually, I never said that. You all just assumed. 4 billion, Mom whispered. Point 2, I corrected gently. Though that number's probably outdated now. We closed another acquisition this morning. The next 10 minutes were a masterclass in watching carefully constructed family dynamics crumble. Victoria's perfect posture slumped. Michael's surgical precision gave way to fumbling hands. Mom's social grace evaporated into stunned silence. Let me understand this. Dad finally spoke, his investment banker instincts kicking in. Nova Technologies, the AI company that's been all over the financial news. The one revolutionizing medical diagnostics. I nodded toward Michael, who had gone pale. The same company whose stock your firm tried to get allocation for last month. I smiled at James. That's mine. I built it. But you live in that small apartment in Brooklyn, Victoria sputtered. I own the building, actually. And the next 3 buildings on that block. I took another sip of water. Though technically, they're held by one of my holding companies. James, ever the investment banker, recovered first. We should discuss investment opportunities. My firm has extensive experience in tech sector wealth management. Like the experience you used to call my idea juvenile at the Christmas party 3 years ago? I asked quietly. Right before you advised your clients to short our stock. He paled. Those shorts had cost his clients millions when our stock tripled after the IPO. Darling. Mom intervened, her social conditioning reasserting itself. You should have told us. All this time, struggling alone. I wasn't struggling, Mom. I was building. There's a difference. I checked my phone again. 17 missed calls from Bradley Anderson already. Word travels fast in finance circles. The hospital contract. Michael suddenly blurted. The AI system. Did you approve it personally? Yes. Though I did recuse myself when your name came up in the bidding process. Conflict of interest, you understand. Victoria's phone buzzed again. Probably her social circle exploding with the news. She had built her influence on being the successful sister. That narrative was crumbling by the second. We should celebrate, Dad announced, switching smoothly into proud father mode. I'll call the club, arrange a proper announcement dinner. Actually, I cut in. I have an early meeting tomorrow. We're launching a new neural network that could revolutionize cancer detection. I glanced at Michael. Your hospital might want to bid on the trial program, assuming you can figure out how to work with basic coding. Mom reached for my hand across the table. Sweetie, we always knew you were special. Did you? I stood slowly. Because I remember being the disappointment. The one who turned down Bradley, who left Goldman Sachs, who played with computers instead of following the family plan. That was different, Victoria protested weakly. We didn't know. Exactly. You didn't know because you never asked. Never looked past the surface. Never thought that maybe, just maybe, the quiet one in the family had something worth building. James cleared his throat. About those shorts, perhaps we could discuss. Your firm's position? Already handled. Check your office email. Our legal team sent over a settlement proposal this afternoon. We've been planning this revelation for a while. The room fell silent again. They were finally seeing it. All the pieces they'd dismissed, all the hints they'd ignored, assembling into a picture they'd never imagined. The Anderson proposal, Dad said slowly. You turned it down because I was worth more than his family's entire portfolio even then, and because he, like everyone in this room, thought success only looked one way. I gathered my things. The simple bag that cost more than James's car, the cheap phone that was actually a prototype from my company's new tech division. Happy birthday, Dad. The gift I had delivered to your office this morning. It's 1,000 shares of Nova Technologies, pre-IPO price. Worth about $30 million now. I smiled. Consider it a return on all those years of disappointment. As I walked to the door, Victoria called out, Liv, wait. Sunday brunch. We always do family brunch. I turned back one last time. Check the business news tomorrow morning. After our neural network announcement, I might be too busy managing my new net worth. It's expected to double. The last thing I saw as I left was Mom reaching for her phone, probably to call her society friends. Finally, she had something to brag about. Too bad it wasn't the story she'd spent years trying to write. The week following Dad's birthday dinner was a study in chaos theory. How one revelation could completely upend an established system. My phone logged over 200 missed calls from family members and their associates, each one more desperate than the last to establish their new position in my life. I sat in my real office, not the modest workspace they'd imagined, but the entire top floor of a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper, reviewing the aftermath. Your brother's hospital has submitted an expedited bid for the neural network trials, my assistant Emma reported, scrolling through updates. And your sister's PR firm has sent 3 partnership proposals. And Bradley Anderson? I asked, though I already knew. 6 meeting requests and a marriage proposal via email. Emma smiled. He emphasized his family's strategic alignment with your vision. I turned to the wall of windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there, my family was still trying to process how their disappointing daughter had outearned their combined net worth several hundred times over. My phone buzzed. Mom, again. Darling, the Wellington Charity Gala is next week. As a major philanthropist, you simply must attend. I've already told everyone you'll be there. I ended the call mid-sentence. The Wellington Gala, where they'd seated me at the young singles table last year, far from the important donors. Emma, what's the status of our Children's Hospital initiative? She pulled up the details. Ready to announce $2 billion in funding, state-of-the-art AI diagnostic equipment for pediatric care units across the country. Schedule the announcement for next Thursday, the same night as the Wellington Gala. Exactly. Just then, my sister Victoria burst through the office doors, designer handbag swinging wildly. Her face fell as she took in the space. The minimalist luxury, the quiet power, so different from her showy workplace. You can't just ignore everyone's calls, she exclaimed. Do you know what this is doing to the family? I gestured for her to sit. You mean what it's doing to the family's narrative? She sank into a chair, deflating slightly. Mom's a mess. Dad's trying to tell everyone he guided your investment strategy. Michael's hospital board is furious. He didn't know about the connection. And James? She paused. Lost his year-end bonus over those shorts? I finished. Actions have consequences, Vic. Something our family never quite grasped. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered. Would it have mattered? When I tried to explain AI architecture at Christmas, you all talked over me about Michael's new yacht. We didn't understand. You didn't try to understand, I corrected. There's a difference. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time, probably with more investment advice I didn't need. The neural network announcement next week, Victoria said carefully. James's firm would love to handle the PR. Already handled. By the same team you said was wasting their time with my little startup last year. She flinched. But, I continued, there might be something else. She leaned forward eagerly. The Children's Hospital Initiative needs community liaisons. Real work, Vic. No shortcuts, no family favors. Interested? She blinked, processing the offer. You trust me with that? After everything? I'm offering you a chance to earn trust. Different thing. After she left, Emma brought in the latest market reports. Nova Technologies stock had jumped another 15% on rumors of the neural network breakthrough. Your father's shares are worth $40 million now, she noted. Good. Maybe he'll finally stop telling people he funded my startup. The next few weeks brought more family attempts at reconciliation. Mom tried hosting a casual dinner with all her society friends. Michael suddenly discovered a passion for AI technology. Dad sent detailed investment strategies I'd already considered and dismissed years ago. But something else happened too. Victoria threw herself into the Children's Hospital project, showing real talent for community organization. Michael's hospital became a leading test site for our medical AI, with him actually reading the technical manuals. Mom still tried to set me up with eligible bachelors, but now she at least asked about my work first. 3 months after the Forbes article, I stood on stage accepting the Technology Innovation of the Year award. In the audience, I spotted my family, not in their usual front row seats, but quietly supporting from the middle rows. They'd finally learned that true success doesn't always need to be center stage. Innovation, I said in my acceptance speech, comes from seeing what others dismiss, from believing in possibilities others ignore, and sometimes from being underestimated by exactly the right people at exactly the right time. Later that night, alone in my office, I opened an old email, the one where Dad had detailed all the reasons my AI company would fail. I kept it as a reminder not of their doubt, but of why I succeeded, because sometimes the greatest motivation comes from proving yourself right when everyone else was convinced you were wrong. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Grandma, the only one who'd ever really listened. They see you now, dear, but you saw yourself all along. That's what really matters. And she was right, because success isn't about making others see your worth. It's about never letting their blindness define your vision. The next morning, as New York City woke up, I was already in my office, working on our next breakthrough. Because $4.2 billion wasn't the end of my story, it was just the first chapter they happened to notice. Sometimes the biggest disappointments turn out to be the greatest successes. You just have to be patient enough to let them see it for themselves. The invitation came through the family group chat at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Emergency family meeting, Saturday, 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. My Uncle Marcus, the self-appointed patriarch, since my father's passing, had spoken. The group erupted with confirmations, each more enthusiastic than the last. I stared at my phone, sitting in my tiny one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn that my family loved to criticize. The same apartment that helped me save over $2,000 a month compared to the luxury buildings my cousins lived in. The same modest space that had been the foundation of my entire financial empire, though none of them knew that. "Olivia, we expect you to be there," my mother texted privately. "Uncle Marcus specifically asked about you." Of course he did. I was the family's favorite topic of discussion. The disappointing daughter. The one who wasted her degree by taking a low-level job at a tech startup instead of joining the family's real estate business. They didn't know that startup had made me a millionaire before I turned 27, or that I now silently owned shares in half the buildings my uncle's company managed. "I'll be there," I replied simply. My cousin Sophia called immediately. "Liv, you might want to prepare yourself," she whispered. "They're planning something big. I overheard Mom and Uncle Marcus talking. They're calling it the intervention." I almost laughed. The intervention? They think you're struggling, living below your potential. Uncle Marcus has this whole presentation prepared about bringing you into the family business, getting you a proper apartment. I glanced at my laptop screen, still open to my investment dashboard. The numbers glowed back at me. $147 million in tech investments, $89 million in real estate holdings, $23 million in cryptocurrency. Total net worth, $259 million. All built quietly over 8 years while they thought I was just getting by. "Thanks for the warning," I told Sophia. "I'll handle it." Saturday arrived crisp and clear. I dressed deliberately in my most modest outfit. Simple black pants, a gray sweater from Target, scuffed boots. The costume of someone they needed to save. The family estate loomed ahead as I parked my 10-year-old Honda among the gleaming luxury cars. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut. 28 family members, sat in the formal living room, arranged like a corporate boardroom. Uncle Marcus stood at the front, next to a projection screen. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. "Olivia," Uncle Marcus said as I took my seat. "Thank you for joining us." I nodded, saying nothing. "We've called this meeting because we're concerned," he began, clicking to his first slide. "About you, about your future, about the shame your current situation brings to our family name." The room murmured in agreement. My cousin Derek, who'd just crashed his third Porsche, nodded sagely. "Let's look at the facts," Marcus continued. "You're 32 years old, living in a rental apartment in a questionable neighborhood, working at some obscure tech company instead of building real wealth with the family business." He clicked through slides showing property values, career trajectories, family expectations, each point designed to highlight my supposed failures. "Your father would be disappointed," he added, twisting the knife. "He built this legacy for you, and you're throwing it away." I felt the familiar surge of anger at the mention of my father, but kept my face neutral. Dad had actually encouraged me to forge my own path, to build something for myself. His last words to me were, "Don't let them clip your wings, butterfly." "What do you have to say for yourself?" Uncle Marcus demanded. The room turned to me, expecting apologies, tears, submission. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet. "Actually, Uncle Marcus," I said calmly, "I have a presentation of my own." He blinked, thrown off script. "This isn't the time for." "I think it is." I stood and walked to the front of the room. "You mentioned building real wealth. Let's talk about that." I connected my tablet to the projector, watching their confused faces. The first slide appeared, a satellite view of their office building on Madison Avenue. "This is your company headquarters," I said, "purchased last year for $68 million. Except it wasn't purchased by Harrison Real Estate Holdings." Uncle Marcus frowned. "What are you talking about? Of course it was." "No," I said softly. "It was purchased by OLI Ventures, my company." I clicked to the next slide, showing the ownership documents, along with 6 other properties in your portfolio. The room erupted in whispers. Uncle Marcus's face turned red. "That's impossible. You can't afford." I clicked again. My investment portfolio filled the screen, numbers clear as day. The room fell silent, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out at once. "As of this morning," I said into the silence, "my net worth is $259 million. That tiny apartment you mock, it's in a building I own. That obscure tech company. I was employee number 4. My shares are worth 8 figures." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Marcus gripped the podium for support. "But," he stammered, "why didn't you tell us?" I looked at him steadily. "Because you never asked. You were too busy planning interventions to notice I didn't need one." The room stayed frozen. Years of assumptions were crumbling around them. My cousin Derek had dropped his phone. Aunt Patricia looked like she might faint. "Now," I said, clicking to my final slide, "should we talk about the real estate market? Because I have some concerns about your recent acquisitions." The silence lasted exactly 37 seconds before Aunt Patricia found her voice. This must be some kind of mistake," she sputtered, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as she adjusted her pearl necklace. "Olivia has always been modest." I smiled slightly. "Would you like to see the bank statements, Aunt Patricia? Or perhaps the property deeds?" "I have those too." Uncle Marcus had collapsed into a nearby chair, his face ashen. "How?" he whispered. How did you manage this without any of us knowing? I pulled up another slide. Let's start with 2016. While you were all mocking my entry-level job at that weird little startup, I was earning stock options. The company was called DataSphere. You might recognize it now. It went public last year at $86 billion. Derek leaned forward, suddenly interested. But that's the company that revolutionized AI data processing. Yes, I nodded, and I own 2% of it. But that was just the beginning. I took those earnings and started investing in real estate. Not the luxury developments you chase, but strategic properties in emerging tech corridors. Silicon Valley, Austin, Boston. My mother stood up shakily. Olivia, sweetheart, why didn't you come to us for advice? We could have helped, like you helped when I wanted to take that tech job, I asked quietly, or when I moved to Brooklyn instead of the Upper East Side. The family's idea of help has always come with conditions. The room shifted uncomfortably. They remembered all the snide comments, the interventions, the constant pressure to conform to their version of success. But that's not why I'm showing you this, I continued, clicking to a new slide. These are your company's recent acquisitions. 6 properties, all purchased above market value, all in areas with declining tech presence. Uncle Marcus straightened, his business instincts kicking in despite his shock. Those properties are prime locations. They were, I interrupted, 5 years ago, but you're so focused on traditional metrics that you've missed the shift. Tech companies are moving out of those areas. I know because I've been tracking their real estate plans through my network. I showed them the data, vacancy rates, market trends, projected values. The same information I'd been trying to share for years, only to be dismissed as inexperienced. Your portfolio is about to take a significant hit, I explained, unless you pivot quickly. Cousin James, who'd recently been promoted to VP despite having no qualifications beyond being Uncle Marcus's son, scoffed. And I suppose you think you know better than us? I pulled up one final document. Actually, yes. My properties in the same market have seen a 47% increase in value over the past 18 months. Because I understand where the industry is actually heading, not where you think it should be. The room erupted in chaos. Some family members started furiously Googling my claims. Others whispered frantically among themselves. Uncle Marcus just stared at me, seeing me, really seeing me, for perhaps the first time. What do you want? He finally asked. Why show us all this now? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I want to propose a merger. Your experience with traditional real estate, combined with my tech industry insights and capital. But I held up a hand as excitement flickered across his face. There would be conditions. What conditions? My mother asked softly. First, a complete restructuring of the company leadership. No more promotions based on family ties. We hire the best people, period. Second, a new investment strategy focused on future trends, not past patterns. And third, I paused, looking around the room, an end to these family interventions. No more judging people's choices just because they don't match your expectations. Uncle Marcus started to speak, but Aunt Patricia cut him off. And if we refuse? I smiled, not unkindly. Then I'll continue buying properties in your target markets. Only I'll do it first, with better information and more efficient capital. Your choice. The weight of the moment hung in the air. Decades of family dynamics, power structures, and assumptions about success were being rewritten in real time. My cousin Sophia, who'd warned me about the intervention, suddenly started laughing. "Oh my God," she gasped. "All those times you asked to join our real estate meetings, you weren't looking for a job. You were doing market research." I winked at her. Someone was paying attention. The family meeting that was supposed to be my intervention had turned into something else entirely. A reckoning, a redistribution of power. And perhaps, if they were smart enough to take my offer, the beginning of something new. Uncle Marcus stood up slowly, straightening his tie. "I think," he said carefully, "we should continue this discussion over dinner. Perhaps at your apartment?" The same apartment they'd spent years criticizing. I caught the hint of humility in his voice and nodded. "I'll have my chef prepare something suitable." "Your chef?" my mother squeaked. "Of course," I replied. "Did you think I actually cooked all those holiday dishes myself?" The drive back to my modest Brooklyn apartment was silent. My mother had insisted on riding with me, perhaps hoping to bridge the years of misunderstandings during the 20-minute journey. She kept glancing at my old Honda, no doubt wondering why I drove it when I could afford a fleet of luxury cars. "It's a good car," I said finally. "Reliable, inconspicuous. Like you," she whispered. "All these years we thought you saw what you expected to see," I replied, pulling into the private underground garage of my building. The security guard nodded respectfully as we passed. "Mr. Santos, is everything prepared upstairs?" "Yes, Ms. Olivia. Your chef has everything arranged, and the documents you requested are in your office." My mother's eyes widened as we stepped into the private elevator. "Documents?" "Merger proposals, financial projections, the kind of homework you always told me to do, remember?" The elevator opened directly into my apartment, and I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. The tiny space they'd pitied me for was actually 3 units combined into a 4,000-square-foot masterpiece. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Manhattan skyline and original artwork. Much of it from emerging artists I'd invested in adorned the walls. Uncle Marcus and the others arrived minutes later, their luxury cars having taken longer to find parking on the street. Their faces as they entered were a study in dawning comprehension. "Please sit." I gestured to the massive dining table, already set for dinner. "Chef Andre has prepared something special." "Andre?" Aunt Patricia perked up. "Not Andre Dubois?" "The same." I nodded. "He consults for my restaurants when he's not running his 3-star Michelin establishment." "Your restaurants?" Derek choked on his water. "Among other things." I took my seat at the head of the table, a position Uncle Marcus had occupied at family gatherings for as long as I could remember. But let's discuss business first. Over 7 courses of exquisite French cuisine, I laid out my vision. The merger would create a new entity, Harrison Oley Holdings, combining their traditional real estate expertise with my tech industry connections and modern investment approach. "These are the upcoming tech corridors," I explained, showing them maps on the dining room's hidden projection screen. "Austin, Raleigh, Boulder, Portland, but not the obvious areas. We need to be ahead of the curve." "Like you were with us," Uncle Marcus said quietly, "buying properties before we even knew they were valuable." I nodded. The future of real estate isn't just about location anymore. It's about understanding the industries driving growth, the companies planning expansion, the startups about to explode. "And you have access to all this information?" James asked, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine interest. "I sit on 12 different tech company boards," I replied. "I've invested in over 40 startups. When they succeed, they need space to grow. Real estate isn't just about buildings anymore. It's about ecosystems. As dessert was served, a deconstructed apple tart that made Aunt Patricia actually cry, I distributed the formal proposal documents. Take time to review these, I said. Have your lawyers look them over. But understand this, the offer expires in 72 hours. Why such a rush? My mother asked. I pulled up one final presentation on the screen. Because 3 major tech companies are announcing relocations next month. Their employees will need housing. Their operations will need facilities. The properties need to be secured before those announcements drive up prices. Uncle Marcus was already reading intently, his business instincts overriding any lingering family dynamics. These projections, they're aggressive. They're conservative, I corrected. I've only included confirmed expansions, not potential ones. The actual opportunity is larger. As the evening wound down, the family dynamics had shifted palpably. Gone were the condescending comments about my lifestyle choices. Instead, cousins who'd once mocked my career were asking about tech investment opportunities. Aunts who tried to set me up with suitable men were suddenly interested in my business strategies. One last thing, I said as they prepared to leave. If we do this merger, we do it my way. No more nepotism. No more old boys club. We hire the best people, period. Can you handle that? Uncle Marcus looked around the apartment, at the success they'd been too blind to see, at the empire I'd built while they'd been planning my intervention, and nodded slowly. I think, he said carefully, we'd be fools not to. 3 days later, the merger documents were signed. 6 months after that, Harrison Ola Holdings had doubled its portfolio value. The family that had once gathered to save me was now following my lead. My father would have loved the irony. Last week, I finally sold the Honda. Not because I needed something flashier, but because I'd found another young professional who needed a reliable car to get to their modest job. I included a note with the keys. Sometimes the biggest dreams hide behind the smallest beginnings. Trust your path. The family still holds regular meetings, but they're different now. Less about judgment, more about growth. Less about maintaining appearances, more about creating value. And that tiny apartment they'd been so worried about, I kept it. Renovated it into a startup incubator for young entrepreneurs who, like me, have dreams bigger than their current circumstances. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's showing them a better way to be right. As for Uncle Marcus, he recently admitted something at a board meeting. I spent years trying to protect the family legacy, only to discover that Olivia was building its future. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't need to. Success speaks for itself. Sometimes it just needs a little time to find its voice. The conference room of Nexus Biotech felt smaller than usual that morning. Maybe it was the tension crackling through the air, or maybe it was just the weight of what I knew was coming. I sat at my usual place, watching my brother Michael strut around like he already owned the place. He'd even brought an entourage, 2 lawyers in expensive suits and our father, looking proud as always when it came to his golden boy. Emma, Michael's smile was all teeth and no warmth. Thanks for gathering everyone on such short notice. I nodded slightly, glancing around at my board members' confused faces. These were people who'd believed in my vision 5 years ago when Nexus was just an idea sketched on coffee-stained napkins. Now we were on the verge of revolutionizing cancer treatment with our patented nanotech delivery system. And my brother had come to steal it all. As you all know, Michael continued, straightening his Italian silk tie, Vertex Pharmaceuticals has been looking to acquire promising biotech startups. What you don't know is that I've been named their new director of acquisitions. My stomach tightened. So that's how he was playing this. I've reviewed Nexus's financials. He gestured to one of his lawyers, who began distributing folders. While the research is interesting, the company needs serious capital to move forward. Capital that only Vertex can provide. Dr. Sarah Martinez, my head of research, spoke up. We're actually quite close to phase AUV trials. Yes, Michael waved her off. But let's be realistic. Emma's little startup needs adult supervision now. I didn't react to the condescension in his voice. I'd heard it all my life. When I chose molecular biology over business school. When I spent my inheritance on lab equipment instead of a downtown condo. When I missed his wedding because I was finalizing our first successful trial. The offer is generous. His lawyer stepped forward. Vertex will absorb all current staff and research. Emma will receive a comfortable consulting position, of course. Of course, I echoed softly. Michael's smile widened. Your little startup is mine now, sis. But don't worry, I'll take good care of your science project. I watched his lawyer open the ownership documents with a flourish. The room went silent as they began reviewing the papers. Then the silence changed, deepened. Michael's smile faltered. There must be some mistake. Is there? I asked, speaking for the first time. These patents, his lawyer shuffled through the papers frantically. They're all registered to Emma Thorne. Personally, I finished for him. Not to Nexus Biotech, to me. The room erupted in whispers. Michael's face turned red. That's impossible. The company licenses the patents from me. I cut in smoothly. A detail you might have noticed if you'd done proper due diligence instead of assuming your little sister was too naive to protect herself. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every piece of intellectual property that makes our delivery system revolutionary. I own them. Personally, the agreement was filed with the Patent Office 3 years ago. Dad. Michael turned to our father, who had been unusually quiet. Did you know about this? Dad looked older suddenly, and strangely uncertain. I never checked. You said you had reviewed everything. Oh, he reviewed what he wanted to see, I said calmly, picking up my tablet. Just like he always has. But while you were both busy underestimating me, I was busy building safeguards. I turned to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, given this attempted hostile takeover, I move to suspend this meeting. We'll reconvene once our legal team has reviewed Mr. Thorne's proposal. The board members nodded, gathering their things quickly. They'd seen enough corporate drama to know when to make a strategic exit. You can't do this, Michael's voice cracked slightly. Vertex has already announced the acquisition to major shareholders. Actually, I smiled properly for the first time that day. I can. And I did. But please, feel free to explain to Vertex how you failed to verify patent ownership before attempting to seize control of $1 billion technology. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Michael? That consulting position you so generously offered me. I turned back to face him. I decline. The sound of his expensive briefcase hitting the floor followed me out into the hallway. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Martinez. That was magnificent. But what now? Now, I typed back. Now we show them exactly what they tried to steal. Because while Michael had been playing corporate games, I'd been changing the world. and I was just getting started. I stepped into my private lab, the real heart of Nexus Biotech, the place where I'd spent countless nights developing the technology they thought they could simply take. On the main screen, our latest trial results glowed with promise. Results that would revolutionize cancer treatment. Results that belonged to me. My phone buzzed again. Dad, this time. We need to talk. I let it go to voicemail. They'd had years to talk, to listen, to understand what I was building. Now they could wait while I finished what I'd started. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they're too busy changing the world to waste words on those who never bothered to listen. And I had a world to change. The next morning, Vertex Pharmaceuticals stock opened down 15%. Headlines screamed about the failed acquisition and undisclosed patent complications. I watched the chaos unfold from my lab while reviewing our latest trial data. Dr. Thorne, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your father is here again. And there's something else. What is it, Julia? The NIA just called. They want to fast-track our approval process. Apparently, someone sent them our complete trial results. I smiled, thinking of the encrypted files I transmitted last night. How interesting. Tell Dad I'll give him 10 minutes. He looked smaller somehow, standing in my lab. The great Thomas Thorne, venture capitalist extraordinaire, surrounded by equipment he'd once dismissed as a waste of money. The board of Vertex wants Michael's resignation, he said without preamble. Not my problem. Emma, please. He's your brother. I carefully placed a slide under the microscope. Was he my brother when he tried to steal my company? When he called my life's work a science project? He didn't understand. No, I adjusted the focus, watching cancer cells die in real time. He didn't bother to understand. Neither did you. I admit, I underestimated. Everyone underestimated me, Dad. That was their mistake. I straightened up. Do you know what this is? I gestured to the microscope. He shook his head. This is the future of cancer treatment. Targeted nanoparticles that can deliver medication directly to cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. 0 side effects. 94% efficacy rate in trials. That's impossible. No, that's science. The science you and Michael were too busy mocking to notice. I pulled up our trial results on the main screen. The NIAK is fast-tracking our approval. Within 6 months, this treatment will be saving lives. My God, he whispered, finally understanding. Emma, your 10 minutes are up. I turned back to my work. Julia will show you out. Wait, he pulled out a folder. Michael asked me to give you this. A new offer from Vertex. Triple the original amount. I took the folder and, without opening it, fed it into the lab's paper shredder. Tell Michael he can keep his money. I have something better. I have results. After he left, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Michael, 2 from Mom, and 1 text from Dr. Martinez. Big pharma vultures circling. 5 acquisition offers this morning. I typed back. Decline them all. We're staying independent. Because independence was what I'd fought for all along. The freedom to pursue my research my way without corporate interference or family politics. My phone rang again. An unknown number. The voice on the other end was familiar. Dr. Thorne? This is Dr. Sandra Collins from the NIH Review Board. We've examined your trial data. It's revolutionary. Thank you. We'd like to put you on the fast-track program. Your treatment could be approved by year's end. I looked at the microscope screen, at the cancer cells being systematically destroyed by my nanoparticles. That would be acceptable. There's something else. She paused. The Nobel Committee has requested your complete research documentation. I sat down slowly. The Nobel Prize. The ultimate validation. I'll have everything sent over today. After hanging up, I walked to the window of my lab. From here, I could see the Vertex Pharmaceuticals building where Michael was probably cleaning out his office. In the reflection, I caught sight of myself. Not the quiet little sister anymore, but Dr. Emma Thorne, revolutionary scientist. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "You've ruined me. Happy now?" I typed back, "I didn't ruin you. Your arrogance did that. But don't worry. When we cure cancer, I'll make sure you get a discount. Because sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I was about to prove something that would change the world." 6 months later, I stood at the podium of the National Institutes of Health press conference. Camera flashes erupted as I announced the FDA's approval of our treatment. Behind me, a screen showed real-time imaging of our nanoparticles destroying cancer cells. "This isn't just a treatment," I concluded. "This is a revolution in oncology, and it's only the beginning." The questions came rapid fire. "Dr. Thorne, how does it feel to be the youngest scientist nominated for the Nobel Prize in Medicine? Will Nexus Biotech remain independent? Any response to Vertex Pharmaceuticals' recent bankruptcy filing?" I handled each one with calm precision, just as I'd handled every challenge in my lab. But the last question made me pause. "Dr. Thorne, your brother Michael Thorne was recently quoted saying this technology was stolen from him. Any comment?" I smiled slightly. "The patent office records speak for themselves. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have patients waiting." Back in my office, Dr. Martinez was waiting with our latest results. The survival rate is holding at 96%. It's unprecedented. "Good." I reviewed the data. "Start preparing the documentation for our next project." "Already done." She hesitated. "Your mother's here." I looked up. "Where?" "Reception. She's been there all morning, watching the press conference on TV." I sighed. "Send her in." Mom hadn't changed much. Still elegant, still perfectly put together. But something was different in her eyes as she looked around my office at the awards, the patents, the evidence of everything she'd missed. "I saw you on TV," she said softly. "You were amazing." "Thank you." "Michael's not doing well." "I know. Dad's trying to arrange a position for him at one of his portfolio companies." She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "He never meant to." "Yes, he did." I cut her off gently. "He meant to take everything I'd built because he never believed I could build anything worthwhile. You all did. We were wrong." She reached into her bag. "I brought something from when you were little." It was a faded photograph. Me at age 7, wearing oversized safety goggles, conducting my first experiment with a chemistry set. "You were always different," she said. "Always quiet, always thinking. We should have seen. You saw what you wanted to see." I handed the photo back. A quiet girl who needed to be more like her ambitious brother. You never noticed I had my own ambitions. And now? What are your ambitions now that you've proved us all wrong? I turned to the window, where construction crews were breaking ground on Nexus Biotech's new research campus. Now, I'm going to cure more diseases, create more breakthroughs, save more lives. Without us? Without interference. I softened slightly. But if you're genuinely interested in understanding my work, The lab tours are on Thursdays. She nodded, understanding the olive branch for what it was. I'll be there. After she left, I went down to my lab, my real home. On my desk was a letter from the Nobel Committee, still unopened. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had something better. Results. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Congratulations. I was wrong. Then Dad, you've changed the world, Emma. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. And finally, Dr. Martinez. Ready to start the next revolution. I smiled, picking up my lab coat. Always. Because success isn't just about patents or prizes or proving people wrong. It's about changing the world while they're busy underestimating you. And I was just getting started. 1 year later, I stood in Stockholm accepting the Nobel Prize in Medicine. My family sat in the audience, not as controllers or critics, but as witnesses to what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones. In my acceptance speech, I didn't mention the attempted takeover or the family drama. Instead, I talked about the patients, thousands now, living cancer-free because of our treatment. I talked about the next horizons in medical science, and I talked about the power of quiet determination. Sometimes, I concluded, the biggest breakthroughs come from the people you least expect. The ones working silently while others are talking. The ones changing the world while others are planning to take it. Later that night, in my lab in Stockholm, I looked at my reflection in the window. Nobel laureate, CEO, scientist. The quiet girl who changed the world. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from a young researcher in our lab. Dr. Thorne, I think we found something in the Alzheimer's trials. I smiled, putting on my lab coat, because this was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving what's possible when you stop listening to those who doubt you and start listening to the quiet voice that says discover, create, revolutionize. And I was still listening.